Welcome back to another episode of Tea After Midnight. Just a little series where we have some tea to keep it nice and classy, but I also tell you scary stories. So grab your favorite tea and settle in, and let me tell you another scary story because, of course, this is Tea After Midnight. This story comes from Riley. Over the course of a year ago, I started to hear and see things. I live in a small town in Wisconsin in an older house from the 1950s. There are 2 floors and a basement. I do live near the forest, but with neighbors down the road. I live with my 2 brothers, my parents, and my 2 dogs. Every experience I've had was when I was home alone, except my most recent paranormal experience. My first experience was beginning of November last year at 1 a.m. I was home alone since my brothers both work night shifts and my parents were away at a cabin. During this night, I was just playing video games and then went off to bed. My bedroom is upstairs, and my dogs sleep with me, and I keep the door cracked open so they can go in and out of my bedroom. I was just scrolling on my phone, and that's when I heard my stairs start to creak. I called out for my dogs, and that's when I realized both of my dogs were already in my room. I was definitely freaked out, but decided to go explore. I had goosebumps, but I didn't really believe in the paranormal during this time, so I kind of brushed it off. I went to go lock the back door and to make sure no one was in the house. I checked the basement, but no one was there. I checked all the rooms, but nobody. So I went back upstairs, and both dogs were still in my room. So I just decided to turn off all the lights, close my door, and lock it, then go to sleep. I woke up at 3 in the morning, this time to my door being wide open and both dogs whining, staring at the dark hallway. I decided to turn my nightstand light on. That's when I saw something in the hallway towards the stairs staring back at me. I didn't know what to do. I froze. The light from my bedroom made the shadow stand out in the corner. I was petrified. I could make out the hands, the height, and the legs. While I was staring at it, it turned, going down the stairs. I listened to every step it took going downstairs. That's when I heard what sounded like running and then a door slamming shut to my basement. I got up, grabbed my phone, called my mom, and hid in the closet with my dogs. I heard the stairs like someone was coming up. I was so scared. My dad was calling the cops, and my parents couldn't get to me because they were 5 hours away, and both of my brothers worked the same shift an hour away. I live just out of town, so you could hear the sirens. I heard the sirens coming closer and faster, but that's when I heard 3 doors throughout my house slamming repeatedly and knocking on my door. I was screaming while my dogs barked. The cops came in, busting through the door. They looked throughout the house and nobody was there, but I know what I saw, and this was not the end. Nights like these kept repeating, and it was only when I was home alone, so nobody believed me. Doors slamming, footsteps, doors becoming locked and unlocked, things being misplaced, waking up at odd times, and never getting enough sleep. My life changed dramatically. I don't know what this was or why it happened all of a sudden. All I know is that it won't leave me alone. Whenever I let my dogs out at night, I see shadows and I always hear things. 2 months ago was when everything changed. My parents were home this time. They heard it and they saw it. I just started this new job a town over, and I've been feeling like I'm being watched, and I keep seeing shadows in the corner of my eyes when nobody is there. After 2 weeks of working that job, I came home around 9. This is the earliest anything has ever happened. I go through the front door, which opens up to my living room with a door that overlooks the kitchen and the stairs. Upstairs, I saw a full-on person, a shadow, somebody walking down the stairs while I was hearing them. It was just my parents, me, and my 2 dogs. I asked my parents who was home as I didn't see my brother's cars. That's because they weren't home. They just thought it was a dog coming downstairs, but that's when I pointed out that both dogs were by their feet, laying down. I was putting my bag away, kicking off my shoes, about to sit down and tell them about my day, just trying to avoid the noise on the stairs. But that's when I looked up before I sat down and I saw a full figure. It was a full-on shadow, someone walking from the stairs into the kitchen and disappearing. Both of my parents saw it. They finally believed me, and from that night we decided never to speak about it. Except we kept seeing a lady dressed in a black dress and this man in an old tuxedo with a mustache. My parents keep waking up, and I keep waking up. My brothers have been telling stories about how they come home at 4 o'clock in the morning and how all the doors are closed, but they hear people walking, door slamming, and how the front door is always unlocked even though we have 4 bolts on that door and it's locked at every moment. Since then, we've had a local priest come and bless the place, but that didn't stop anything. It made it worse. I keep hearing a lot of things. 3 weeks ago, me and my mom were home, just us and our dogs. We heard my dog whining, so we went to look where she was. She was in the basement. Neither of my dogs go downstairs because they hate the basement. They always bark at it. They even growl at it. They will avoid it at all costs, so hearing her whine down there made me and my mom go look. That's when we saw it. A figure, tall and gray with glowing green eyes, a lanky body, and long, pointy, uneven fingers. Even the knees were messed up. It was terrifying. We picked Maya up and ran upstairs, shutting the basement door behind us. My mom grabbed her purse, I brought our phones, and I loaded up my other dog, and we left. My mom and dad both decided that it's best if we just left, so we did. I haven't been to the house since that night 3 weeks ago. I still feel followed. I still feel like something's behind me, watching me. My mom hates talking about it and refuses to. I think my parents are hiding something. I think they've known all along since we moved in 14 years ago. Riley, I am so glad that you guys are out of there now, but I definitely want to know more as to why you think your parents are hiding something, and why all of a sudden it started to ramp up just recently. But this thing that you said is in the basement, a figure tall and gray with glowing green eyes, a lanky body, and long, pointy, uneven fingers with messed up knees. I don't know what that is, but I have chills just thinking about it and just thinking what it could look like. So if anybody has any idea what this could be, please let us know. But Riley, thank you so much for sending in your story. I hate that you went through this, but if you have any updates on anything, please send it my way. I'd love to hear an update on this and kind of what you guys have been going through as of now. But again, I'm so sorry you've been going through this, and I'm absolutely terrified of what is in that basement. But that does conclude this episode of Tea After Midnight. If you have any personal scary stories you want to share, I would love to read them. You can email me at the email on the screen or the email in the caption of this video. But as always, you guys, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for being here. I love you so, so much. I hope you have the best night, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.
Their cousin took a picture of something flying over Plum Island off the coast of Long Island in 2001, and whatever was in that photograph did not look like anything that should have been flying. So if you're from Long Island or you grew up in the area, like I did, there's a good chance that you've heard of stories about Plum Island. And for anyone who hasn't, Plum Island is a small island sitting just off the eastern end of Long Island, and it's near Orient Point. And for decades, it was home to a federal animal disease research facility. And because access to the island was heavily restricted, it became one of those places that naturally attracted many, many rumors. And growing up there, we all heard, all these crazy theories, right? Secret experiments, strange animals, the Montauk Monster that washed up, government projects, weird things washing up on the beaches. Stranger Things is based off of that area. Most of it was probably just local legend mixed with the fact that there was this mysterious government facility sitting on an island that none of us could simply just walk to or, swim up to or boat to, whatever. But when you're a kid growing up there, Plum Island also becomes our own little version of Area 51. And you can see it, it's there, but you don't really know what's actually happening there. And that brings me to something that a viewer claims happened to him or his cousin. Now, obviously, I have no way to verify what he saw, and there could be a perfectly normal explanation for the photograph. So take this story for what it is, and you can decide for yourselves. Now, it was sometime in the warmer months of 2001. His cousin was out near the eastern end of Long Island, not far from Orient Point, and he was looking out across the water in direction of Plum Island. And this was before everybody had a high-quality camera sitting in their back pocket. He had one of those little, point-and-shoot cameras with him. You'd have to roll it back to get the next picture. The kind where, you took your pictures, you finished the roll, and then you had to wait until they got developed and go to the store and pick them up and, see what actually came of them. Now, he was looking across the water when something caught his attention in the sky right away. And at first he thought maybe it was like a bird, or maybe a kite, except it wasn't moving like one. He described it as a black blob. That's really the only way that he could explain it. There was no obvious shape to it. There was no wings, no tail, no lights, no sound. There was no nothing. Just this completely black, almost shapeless mass suspended in the sky over the water. And in my mind, I pictured it like the Venom blob. And the strangest part was that it didn't seem to be flying. It was just floating, just sitting there, he said. And the wind was coming across the water pretty hard that afternoon, and you could see birds flying against it, and everything on the surface of the water looked, like was being pushed in that same direction. But this thing wasn't, reacting to the wind like the birds. So his cousin stood there watching it, trying to figure out, what it was that he was looking at. And he thought maybe it was a bunch of balloons that were tangled together, but it wasn't rising. He thought maybe it was smoke. But it wasn't breaking apart or changing shape the way that smoke normally would. It just hung there, clumped together. And then it started moving as one, very slowly, not up, not down, not sideways, but actually back towards Plum Island. And that's when his cousin grabbed his camera and he raised it up and he aimed toward this object and he took a picture. Then another, and by the time that he lowered the camera, the black mass had stopped yet again. And he said it remained completely motionless for several seconds, and then something happened that still bothers him. It dropped, not like something like falling out of the sky or, like plummeting like that. He described it more of like an elevator suddenly descending straight down and very, very fast. It dropped toward the water and it disappeared from his view. And his cousin actually waited to see if there was going to be like a splash or something like that. And there wasn't one. He kept staring at that exact spot where it had disappeared and nothing ever came back up of it, So eventually he left, and because this was 2001, there was no photograph to immediately pull up on your phone and zoom in and see what you got. He didn't even know if he'd actually captured the thing at all. So several days later, he got the roll back after being developed, and most of the pictures were completely normal, right? There were, some family pictures and scenery and random shots from around Long Island, out in the Montauk area, and then he got to that picture from that day, and there it was, clear as day, above the water in the distance was this dark object. And it was completely black, irregular looking shape against the lighter sky. You see Plum Island in the background, and he had actually caught it. But the photograph created more questions than answers, because once you actually, could like freeze the object in place and look at it, it looks even stranger. And I am showing it, but it didn't have the recognizable silhouette of a plane. It didn't look like a helicopter, and despite his original assumption, it didn't really resemble a bird or anything. It just looked like this black mass hanging in the sky. And he showed it to family members, and everybody had different explanations. Oh, it's a bird, it's something on the film, it's a balloon, it's probably a helicopter really far away. And maybe one of them are right? I'm not disproving any of that. But his cousin kept coming back to the same problem that, he had watched it with his own eyes, and whatever was in that photograph had been stationary against the wind before moving sideways and then dropping down into the water. So years later, he said there was one detail that he never really thought about or really talked about because he thought it made the story sound absolutely ridiculous. While he was standing there watching the object, he remembered feeling something strange, like not like physically ill or weird, more like that instinctive feeling you get when you're somewhere alone and suddenly realize that, something else is aware of your existence and knows that you're there. He said there was one moment when the black mass stopped moving, and even though it was far away, he couldn't shake the feeling like it had stopped because it was watching him, or he just felt like he was being watched. And then he raised the camera, took the picture, and shortly after it disappeared. Now, do I think his cousin photographed some secret experiment escaping from Plum Island or another, Montauk Monster or Stranger Things event? I have absolutely no idea. There are plenty of ordinary things out there that can look bizarre and they can be easily explained. And when photographed from a distance, especially on an old camera, and Plum Island's reputation makes it very easy to connect something unexplainable with all the stories that we've heard growing up out there. But I do think that's what makes the photograph so creepy. It doesn't prove anything. It's just a picture from 2001 of a black shapeless object floating over the water near one of the most mysterious places where we grew up and hearing about. And, you know, maybe it was a balloon, maybe it was a bird, maybe it was a kite, maybe there is a completely boring explanation that nobody ever thought of. But his cousin is very adamant about one thing, and that is whatever that black thing was, it wasn't being carried by the wind. It was moving on its own. Like, it was like sentient, like it was very much alive, he felt. And the last place that he saw it heading to was Plum Island. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. If you're from the area, if you have your own stories, let me know.
We have officially found the Yeti and actually spoken to the Yeti of the Himalayan mountains. Now, I did not know this, but I was actually just watching this episode on the History Channel and they just casually mentioned this information, so I had to look it up and do a deep dive of my own. And sure enough, we've actually known this since the 1960s, what the Yeti is, where it lives, everything about it. And it's not like what we imagined with it being a Bigfoot-like creature. It is something completely different. And what it is just the local residents that live high up in the Himalayan mountains. Now, you might be thinking, they can't be a big, hairy creature that walks around barefooted and everything else. Yes, they can. Okay, so the people that live at the very upper layers of the Himalayan mountains that just live there permanently year-round, their bodies have quite literally adapted differently than ours. This is documented that they have feet deformations where their feet are enlarged. Their skin on them is extremely thick, and it allows them to walk barefoot through the snow for an unlimited amount of times. Like, there's no downsides to them for walking barefoot through the snow. They don't get frostbite the way we do. Now, this is not healthy for them. This is essentially causing a lot of joint pains and a lot of different issues in their body, because their bodies are essentially growing these feet deformations to withstand the frostbite. So their toes are curling up, the skin is getting extremely thick and calloused, even at an early age. Their body is pushing all the blood to their feet, essentially, so this causes problems elsewhere in their bodies. So it's not like a healthy adaptation. It is very bad. But we knew about this in 1965. There's an expedition in the Himalayan mountains where they were trying to find the Yeti, and they were following these footprints that they found in the snow, and they're like, oh my gosh, this is Yeti footprints. And they follow these footprints in the snow, and then they get out there in the middle of nowhere, and there's just a dude. He's standing there. And from a distance, when everything is covered in snow, they have noticed that there is a phenomenon that at a distance, everything looks much bigger. And this is where the mistaken identity of everybody saying the Yeti's between 7 and 10 foot tall. When everything's just solid white, anything that's there pops, and it makes everything look very big. And then these people, to stay warm, they wear hides and furs. And so from a distance, they do look like a big furry human. And then you go over there and you see the footprints and you're like, oh my gosh, it's a big great ape. It's just them walking around barefoot. And this is a photo of the guy's foot that I showed earlier. And like, this is some of the wild deformation. Like, they can't even wear shoes. Many of them cannot physically wear shoes. And they consider wearing shoes extremely formal and ceremonial. So they don't think it's like a normal thing to wear shoes. So the kids, the adults, everybody just goes around barefoot all the time. And I hate to make this like comparison, but it's almost like they have like hobbit foot. And I'm not saying there's not Bigfoot and Yetis and stuff out there that are the way we think of them, like Sasquatch. If you've watched my videos, you know that I firmly believe in them. But at least in this case, we know what the mistaken identity of the Yeti is. And, you know, this is kind of wild when you think about it. Gorillas weren't officially scientifically recognized as a real species until 1847. That means that George Washington, the founder of our country, did not know gorillas existed. He also didn't know dinosaurs existed. That's how much science has came along in just the last couple hundred years. So if you would have told somebody about dinosaurs, you know, 700, you know, in the 1700s, they'd be like, what are you talking about? You know, are you talking about dragons? Because they believed in dragons, and that's probably what they were doing, is finding, you know, dinosaur fossils and bones. And then, you know, they didn't know gorillas existed. They thought that was a fairy tale or like the story of a monster, because there were stories of gorillas that date back thousands of years, and just no one believed those stories either. Just like how there's Sasquatch stories today, and no one believes them. So let's move a little bit more east over into China, where the Himalayan mountains do run through all the way over there. In China, the Chinese officials are way more open-minded to it than our U.S. officials are. Chinese officials have actually said, yeah, absolutely, there's what's called Yemen that live in the mountains. But Yemen does not mean like a Sasquatch, like a gorilla creature. They quite literally believe, and this is as most recently as like 2017, where Chinese forest officials were walking through the woods deep into the forest to, plan out like, routes for pipelines and, water pipes and all this other crazy stuff. And they come across a village of Yemen and have to reroute where the pipe's going to go because they don't want to disturb the village of Yemen. So what is a Yemen? A Yemen is just an uncontacted civilization of essentially like a wild man. So kind of like what we would describe as Bigfoot. If you look at Neanderthals and what they were, we know that there's more than 30 hominid species of humans. So we know that there's a ton of other species of human like us. Homo sapiens were nothing special. There's Neanderthals and everything else. We were just the ones that outsmarted and outlived and also outbred all the others. And technically what we are today is a mix of Neanderthal. Everybody, with no exceptions, has Neanderthal DNA in them. And every time I make this comment in a video, people say, African Americans don't have Neanderthal DNA. Yeah, they do. It's just a much smaller percentage than everybody else's. So Neanderthal DNA is found in everybody, to no exception. They've never found anybody in the world without Neanderthal DNA. Some people have up to 20% Neanderthal DNA in them. That's how recently humanity has still bred with Neanderthals. So Neanderthals, we've already are having to rework that whole thought of how much longer did Neanderthals live than we originally expected. Because we originally expected that the last Neanderthal took its breath 10,000 plus years ago. And now we're going, ugh. It has to be a lot closer than that if some people are still pulling 20% Neanderthal DNA. And that's essentially what Chinese officials say Yemen are, is they are still uncivilized, uncontacted groups of people that could still very well be what we would call a Neanderthal. And Neanderthal would have much hairier bodies. They would be that broader build. It would be essentially like what you would describe as Sasquatch. And they would be amazing at hiding. In fact, they actually did a test where they took a group of people that were trained. Now, they were trained, and they took them to the outskirts of China, like these really remote areas. People do not realize how big the Himalayan mountain range is, and like the countryside of China. You can walk for days, quite literally days, without running into another individual in these woods. I mean, it is some of the most remote places in the world. And they said, hey, we know we're going to drop you off in like this little area right here, and we're going to try to find you. And they couldn't find them because they were trained. Just like how a Neanderthal, especially if Neanderthals over time, if there's a pocket of them still alive somewhere, know that we are the enemy, they would be so good at hiding it's not even funny. Like so amazing at hiding that it's not even fathomable. And here's the thing. Everybody always says, why don't we find skeletons of Bigfoot and all this other stuff? We find Neanderthal skeletons all the time. And those very well could be the same skeletons that we're looking for when we think that we're finding, or we're looking for a Bigfoot skeleton, but we find that. They're one and the same, is what a lot of people are saying. They are currently reworking all these theories on Bigfoot, Sasquatch, and Neanderthals right now. It's very exciting in the scientific world, and I can't wait to see what comes out of it. If you like this and want to keep up with this, I want to talk about it more in the future. Follow our podcast. It's called Matt from Nomads. I'd love to see you over there. It's on Spotify and Apple Podcast.
This might be the scariest story that I've ever read. If I were in this situation, I would not know what to do. If you're new here, hi, I usually talk about pretty scary stuff, and I actually have an email where anyone who finds this page can send me their ghost stories. And let me tell you, y'all do not disappoint with the scary stories. So let's get into it. Originally, some of the story did not specify whether or not they wanted to remain anonymous, so for obvious reasons, I'm going to keep them anonymous. But for the story's sake, her name will be Jade. Jade starts off this whole email by saying that this happened when she was 13 years old, and she has not been able to forget it since. She was staying the night at her grandmother's house, who was very, very, very religious. Crosses above every single doorway, all over the house, rosary in her bedside table. You get the gist. Jade is staying the night at her grandmother's house, as well as her mom and her sister, who are staying in a separate room. After everybody had gone to bed, Jade stayed up on her phone. At this point in time, there was nothing weird going on, but she decided to go to bed. She doesn't remember falling asleep, but remembers waking up to this noise. Interesting was, she said that the noise was like, she thought she heard it. There and listened, nothing. We've all been in situations where something scares us awake, or we think we hear something, and then we open our eyes when there's nothing there. But she grabs her phone, looks at the time, and it is 3 a.m. As she's setting her phone down and going back to bed, she sees something out of the corner of her eye. Immediately turns to see that the cross over the bedroom door had been flipped upside down. Thought that the top nail had fallen out of the cross and kind of like spun around on accident. So she gets out of bed, and as she's approaching the cross, she can see one out in the hallway that is also upside down. She creeps out into the hallway and can see all the way down the hallway into the kitchen, can see all the crosses along the walls are also upside down. As she's staring at these crosses, she has nothing to say and actually just chuckled and was like, okay, this is weird. And then begins to hear noises coming from the kitchen. Out of curiosity, she approaches the kitchen and sees that one of the cabinet handles is violently shaking up and down like somebody is trying to open it. And then another. This goes on until all of the cabinet handles are shaking violently as if people were trying to open them. As she's looking into the kitchen at this happening, the lights begin to flicker. Flicker once, twice. On the third flicker, all of the power in the house goes out. I'm talking like refrigerator, air conditioning, everything. So the house is now dead silent. Grabbed her phone and was trying to use it as a light, but it ultimately ended up dying within like seconds of her trying to turn it on. So she begins to call out to her grandmother. And as she called out, she could hear footsteps moving around in the living room. So she calls out again. At this point, Jade is at the end of the hallway. All the cabinets had stopped shaking. The power's out. It's 3-something in the morning. The footsteps stop at the end of the hallway. She says that she was so scared she just wanted to run into her grandmother's room, but just could not get herself to run. Until she heard someone breathe. Grandmother is praying. All of a sudden, everything just stops. There is just silence. And then whatever was outside of the door trying to get in and was impersonating Jade started to laugh. And not in a something is funny kind of a laugh. Like whatever was on the other side of the door trying to get in knew that it was scaring Jade and her grandmother. Again, they just kept praying and they kept quiet. After this all, they heard something going back and forth from the walls in the hallway, kind of trudging back down the stairs. They stayed awake in her grandmother's room until the sun came up. And Jade says that around 6 o'clock in the morning, all of the power returned to the house. And they heard when it did come back on. As Jade and her grandmother are walking through this entire house, as daylight is flooding in through the windows, she begins to think that she just imagined everything. The cabinets were all the same. None of the doors were open. All the crosses were returned to the natural state. Right as she was about to just say, like, I'm sorry, I imagined this whole thing, she sees a cabinet handle on the floor. Her grandmother actually sees it, picks it up quickly, puts it in a drawer, and says, do not tell your mom. Her grandmother did not tell her why. Years later, she was talking to her grandmother about what had happened, if she remembered that night or not, and her grandmother just said, yes, I remember. And when Jade asked her if she had told anyone, her grandmother said, yes, I told your great-grandmother. At that point in time, her great-grandmother had been dead for years. And when Jade asked what she meant by that, she just looked at her and said, this is not the first time that the cross is turned upside down in this house. I just want to make a quick note on why this scared me so bad, okay? Grandmother had also gotten their house blessed. Jade and her grandmother were both convinced that nothing bad was going to happen there because of how many things they had in the house to protect themselves. Hearing that something was just messing with all of that stuff. But anyways, that's going to do it for me. Stay tuned for more ghost stories.
This is the night that this paramedic will never forget, and that is because he had to assist a possessed nun. So this happened in La Cruz Roja, the Red Cross, in Saltillo, Coahuila. I hate when I hear places that I've been to because I don't want to be at places where this shit has happened at. So of course this story does have to do with a nun, but it starts off with this guy who is from Veracruz, but he moves to Saltillo, Coahuila to be a paramedic. One of his cousins also moved there with him, who's also a paramedic. They both work at the Red Cross, and basically all they do is deal with emergencies. So this guy says that this happened around 2007, 2008. He remembers the night because they received an urgent phone call. His co-workers went to the urgency and he stayed behind by himself. He explains that minutes passed and they returned, and on the stretcher was this girl that looked like she was maybe 20 years old. This girl was accompanied by a nun and a priest, and she was coming from a convent, and he knows which one, but he doesn't want to say the name. He doesn't want people to think it's a joke or have them go there and do weird stuff. Now, he wasn't the one who put them in a room or anything anything like that. He just saw when they passed by, he thought, hey, that was a weird scenario. And the only things that he saw was whatever was being written down on her documents. Basically, they sedated her and they needed her to relax and calm down. Now, he explains that because the entire scene that he saw was so weird, he got a little bit curious and he got really nosy. So he made sure to get really close to the door so that he can hear what was happening. So he says that he got close to the door of that room and he overheard that the nun that was with the girl was actually the Mother Superior, and she was explaining to the doctors who were taking down notes that this girl was having like epilepsy episodes. They were also telling the doctors how this girl was acting very aggressive and very violent. After being sedated, this girl slept for a really long time. He remembers how this girl slept the entire night and the entire next day. Now that in itself wasn't weird. Obviously they sedated her, so she slept the entire night, the entire next day, and that is when he realized on the following day that nuns were in and out of that room. Like, this girl never stayed alone, and the times that he would go close to the room, the nuns that were in there with her were praying the entire time. Basically, all of these nuns were like tag teaming each other into that room and praying over this girl. He knows that they are nuns. He knows that nuns pray, but he's like, what do they think is happening? Because to him, he's like, well, this is something medical. They're saying that she has epilepsy. They're saying that she's acting aggressively. Why are they praying like this and excessive? He knows that they did studies on that girl and they're just waiting for them to come back, but he was just curious as to like what led for them to bring her there. Why are they praying over her? He just thought the entire thing was weird, because if anything, if they just thought she needed prayer, why would they bring her to the emergency room? He says that everything changed that day. He explains that around 11 p.m., this girl had been sleeping for almost 2 days and the show started. Things got fucking crazy. He explains how this girl, 20-year-old, when she finally wakes up, she wakes up with a fury that they had never seen before. She had an IV like in her arm. She pulls that thing off of her. When this girl woke up, the nun that had been in the room with her, she takes the rosary off herself, she puts it on the girl, and she just starts praying over her. Now the guy, the paramedic telling us the story, says that this all happened so fast. Like, he had just walked into the room and he's like, we're not at a church. Like, I'm watching a scary movie and this is all happening at the Red Cross. This girl is angry. She rips this thing off. The nun takes the rosary off of her, puts it on the girl, and he has to react as a paramedic. Even though he's looking at something that he is like, what the fuck is happening? He decides that he wants to touch her head to see if she's hot. He gets close to her. He puts his hand on her, her forehead, and he says that she is like burning hot. Now, as he has his hands on her forehead checking the temperature, because he wanted to check it with the equipment, but he just wanted to check her really quickly first, right? So he puts his hands there. He says that girl grabs his hand, all 4 fingers, and she squeezes them so tight that he feels like she's about to break them. Now, he is in shock at the strength that this girl is like about to break his fingers, so he pulls back and he falls all the way down to the ground, and that is when he looks at the nun. So as he's looking at the nun, he's like, what the fuck is happening? The nun is looking right at him and she says, do you know how to pray? And he just nods yes, and she's like, it's time for you to pray. I swear that if somebody needed me to pray in a moment like this, I would not remember anything. There's no way I would remember any prayer. Not even a song. Actually, one song. La Guadalupan. What the fuck, bitch? Is that gonna work? Would that be helpful? I would not remember any prayer. I'd be crying and being like, you pray for me. Like, what the hell? Now he's on the ground like, pray. I need to start praying. And lucky for him, in that moment, the priest actually walks into the room. He exits the room and he says that he doesn't know why or how or who let them, but that same night, that girl was taken back to the convent. Now again, he's nosy, and thankfully for us, he was. He says that there wasn't like a conclusion. There wasn't like a specific disease or like something that was wrong with her for them to treat. He has no idea who decided that she could leave. Like, was she okay? What did she have is what he was thinking that entire time. The only thing that stayed registered on that chart was that she was normal, she was fine. Out of nowhere, she would have epilepsy episodes. He has no idea what happened to her, but what he does know is that, the studies that they did on her, that shit came back and they found out that that 20-year-old was pregnant. Now, the thing with him was like, fine, she's a nun, she ended up pregnant. We've heard of shit like that before. This isn't like the most shocking news. He was like, her being pregnant wouldn't make her act the way she's acting. Because she's pregnant, that doesn't mean that she would act this way, that or she should be acting this way. Like, obviously something else was wrong with this girl. And he didn't even tell us like everything that happened. He told us the last thing that happened to him. He says that he's a skeptic. If you lived in a room with somebody like this, her voice wasn't a voice of a 20-year-old. It was so raspy. It sounded like an old lady. She would spit at you. She would say all these bad words, and in front of like the nun and the priest, like there was something wrong with her that this hospital could not help her with. He's like, if you're a skeptic and you were in that room, you would leave a believer. Like, you would think that this lady was definitely possessed. Seeing it in a movie and seeing it happen in front of your eyes are completely different things. Imagine you're in the room, this shit is happening, this nun is looking at you and saying you better pray. You're gonna want to pray. You're gonna want to know how to pray. Like, he's like, you have no other choice than to start praying. He explains that he still works there at the same place, and that after that incident is when they put these crucifixes in every single one of the rooms in that Red Cross. They even put an altar of the Virgin Mary in like the hallway of that hospital. I'm gonna need him to be just a little bit more nosy and see if that girl's okay. You know what I mean? Like, you don't gotta go look for her. Maybe look into her, see if she's fine, see if the baby's fine. Like, wouldn't she have... I'm thinking too much about it. No, I don't even want to know. Why do I want to know? I need to stop being a nosy ass bitch. I was about to say, like, you work at the hospital, couldn't you check if she had a baby? But then again, like, a lot of people in Mexico have babies at their houses too, especially if you're at a church trying to hide a pregnancy. Maybe you would have the baby at the church, but shouldn't there be a register of that? Maybe not. Oh my god, I'm thinking too much. Somebody help. Somebody give me answers. What do you guys think? Yeah, let me know what you guys think.
If you get scared easy, go ahead and scroll because I have another paranormal story submission. This one comes from Harlan, Kentucky. Let's get into it. Email reads, "Hi, I'm someone who would like to stay anonymous, but you can call me Mara. I'm from Harlan, Kentucky, and this happened in the house that I grew up in. When I was 9, I started seeing somebody standing behind my dad. It's literally the only way that I know how to explain it. It was always a woman. The first time I saw her, my dad was sitting at the kitchen table with his back toward the hallway. I looked up from my cereal and there was a woman standing directly behind his chair. She was extremely tall, extremely thin. Her hair was dark and hanging over part of her face. She was wearing something white that looked dirty around the bottom. I remember staring at her because I thought somebody had come into our home. Then my dad leaned forward to grab his coffee and I could suddenly see her entire body. Her feet weren't touching the floor. I screamed. My dad spun around and she was gone. After that, I saw her constantly, but only around him. If he was outside working on something, sometimes I would see her through the window, standing a few feet behind him. If he fell asleep on the couch, she would be in the hallway watching him. Once, we were driving home at night and I looked in the side mirror and saw her sitting in the bed of his truck. I stopped looking for her after that. My parents thought I had an imaginary friend or was having nightmares, but I was terrified of this woman and I did not want her there. Then, one night, my dad came in my room and he woke me up. He asked me a question I will never forget. He said, "That woman that you see, does she ever talk to you?" I started crying. Apparently, he had woken up from the couch a few minutes earlier because somebody was whispering directly into his ear. He couldn't understand what she was saying. After that, my dad stopped making fun of it. But things got worse. Cabinets would be open in the morning. We would hear footsteps upstairs when everyone was downstairs. My mom started finding long black hairs in places that made absolutely no sense. And by the way, no one in my family has black hair, or even dark hair for that matter. The worst thing she did was mimic us. I would hear my mom calling me from downstairs when she wasn't home. My dad would hear me crying from my bedroom while I was sitting right beside him. One afternoon, my mom heard my dad come home from work. She even heard the truck pull in. The back door opened. His boots walked across the kitchen. Then his voice said, "Babe." My mom yelled back that she was upstairs. The footsteps started coming up, slowly. She told me she could hear each individual stair creak. Then my dad called her cell phone. He was still at work. My mom locked herself in the bedroom until he came home. That was when they finally decided we were moving. A few weeks before we left, my grandmother came over to help my mom. She had never heard about the woman. My parents intentionally kept it from her because my grandmother was extremely religious and they knew exactly what she would say. She walked into our kitchen and froze. She stared toward the hallway for probably 10 seconds. Then she asked my dad why he had a woman following him. Nobody answered. My dad asked what she looked like. My grandmother described her exactly. Long dark hair, white dress, bare feet, extremely thin. Then she said something none of us had ever noticed. She has something around her neck. My dad went completely white. He told my grandmother to leave. Years later, when I was 17, I finally found out why. My dad had grown up about 20 minutes away from that house. When he was a teenager, one of his closest friends was a girl who I'm going to call Rebecca. That is not her real name, and I'm changing a few identifying details because there are still people alive who know her, and I don't want anyone trying to figure out who she was. And I don't want to disrespect anybody who is related to her by telling this story. But Rebecca disappeared when they were 17. They searched in the woods for her for days. She was eventually found from a tree. Everyone was told it was sewer slide. My dad never believed it though. He showed me a picture of her for the first time that night. It was her. Same hair, same face, same woman I had been seeing since I was 9 years old, but there's another part of this that my dad refused to explain. When I asked him why would she follow him, he got really quiet. My dad passed away in 2021. The night after his funeral, I stayed at my parents' house with my mom. At 3:17 in the morning, I woke up because I heard my dad's voice downstairs. He said my name. I didn't move. Then he said it again. My mom heard it too. We stayed in her bedroom until morning. When the sun came up, we went downstairs together. The back door was standing open. There was mud across the kitchen floor, bare footprints. They started at the back door, crossed the kitchen, and stopped directly behind the chair that my dad used to sit in. But this is a different house now. There were no footprints going back outside. I haven't seen the woman since my dad passed, but about 6 months ago, my mom called me crying. She still lives in Kentucky, and although not in that house anymore, she had been going through some of my dad's old belongings and found a picture of Rebecca. She put it on the kitchen counter because she wasn't quite sure what she should do with it. That night, she woke up because somebody was walking around downstairs. She didn't go look. In the morning, the picture was gone. She found it in her bedroom, sitting on my dad's side of the bed. I don't know what that means, and I'm not sure that I want to. First of all, thank you so much for sharing your story with me. On my page, I talk frequently about mimics. This is something that I dealt with a lot growing up in the haunted house that I grew up in, that my parents still live in. If I'm being honest, first thoughts, it's very weird that the girl who passed was very stuck on your dad, not trying to make any assumptions. I just think that's kind of crazy. I'm going to try to not make assumptions because I don't want to be rude or disrespectful to anybody in the situation. Also, I'm very sorry for your loss, but it is interesting. It does seem like this spirit, for whatever reason was very attached to your father, but it's interesting that you're still hearing from what seems to be her spirit even after his passing. Wondering if there's any sort of other connection that maybe you don't know about. I don't know. Anyways, thank you so much for submitting your story. If you want to send your scary story to me for a chance for me to read it on my page, send it to the email above. You can choose to either say your name or you can swap it out with something else, stay anonymous, whatever makes you comfortable. And if you want to hear more spooky stories, make sure to go ahead and give me a follow. As always, thank you for watching. Love you, bye.
Florida lies just south of the Appalachians, and plenty of creepy stories come out of there as well. This story tonight is the one I was trying to read last night when my dog started growling in the garden, and I am so excited to have you back and be back out in the garden to tell you. So you know the drill. Grab a drink, grab a cozy blanket, and settle in while I tell you a scary story in my garden. After dark. Welcome to Ghosts in the Garden. This story was sent to me by Amani. I'm from South Florida, and growing up I've had plenty of scary experiences, but this one was by far the scariest. I was about 15 years old, and I lived with my mom and sister. They were both heavily involved in crystals, tarot cards, and things of that nature, and it truly opened up our home to a lot of things. We lived in an apartment complex, and my mom always told us to never go to the pool because unfortunately 2 twin children had drowned there and passed away. But one day, my best friend came over and we really wanted to go to the pool, and my mom reluctantly said yes. We went to the pool, and it was only the 2 of us there, and everything was fine. We came back in, showered, and decided we wanted to watch The Conjuring. Bad idea, right? After the movie, it was about 2 a.m. and we were just chilling when we decided to grab something out of the kitchen. I went alone, not thinking anything of it, and as I stood in the kitchen with my back turned, I heard something whisper my name, very soft and very slowly. I immediately turned around, thinking it was my best friend, but she was still in my room with the door closed. So I gathered every piece of my heart that had dropped to my feet, and I started speed walking toward my room. But then I heard it call my name again, but this time it was quick and very aggressive. At that point, I was petrified, and so I ran and pushed my bedroom door open. As soon as I opened the door, my best friend fell off the bed as she was trying to run out of the room to get to me. I immediately looked at her and said, "Was that you?" And she said, "No, what are you talking about? I thought that I heard your mom." Keep in mind, the entire time that I was out of the room, I never said a word. We immediately grabbed my Bible and recited Psalm 91, and then out of nowhere, we heard what sounded like the refrigerator door open and then slam shut. We knew that everyone else was asleep, and so whatever that was that had slammed the door had no business being there. The next morning, we ran to my mom, and she told us that she heard the fridge as well and thought that it was one of us. But we quickly assured her that it was not. We asked my sister just to be sure it wasn't her either, and she told us nope, she didn't wake up that night at all. I have had many other experiences in that home, but this one was by far the scariest. I hope that this story didn't scare you as bad as it did me and my best friend. There is something so unnerving about a mimic, and especially in your home. I'm sure you've all heard my story from a few videos back when I heard a mimic in the driveway, and there is truly nothing scarier to me than thinking you hear someone you know and it not being them at all. Have you ever encountered a mimic? I would love to hear about it, and if you have any other story to share with me, please feel free to email it over. Otherwise, I will see you out here on another dark night in my garden for another scary story. Bye.
Story is tragic. Somebody said that they never told their ex-girlfriend the entire truth about what really happened to her. I am back with another spooky story. Apparently, his mother was working Obeah on his girlfriend and he found out when it was too late. So we're gonna call the person who submitted the story James. So James says that he started dating this girl. We're gonna call her Janine. So Janine was James's first love. Said he never felt that way about any other woman. That was the first woman he ever brought home. He wishes that he had it. Now Janine was the woman that he was going to marry, the woman that was going to carry his children. However, his mother had other plans. His mother never liked his girlfriend. He remembers from the first time he brought her home, his mother barely looked at her. She was polite, but there was something strange about the way his mother was watching her. One night after his girlfriend left, his mother asked him, "Did she take anything from this house?" He laughed because Janine would never, but the mother was dead serious. He said, "No, I mean anything personal, hair, clothes, anything." He's like, "No, like what is that about?" Now backstory. His mother is from Trinidad and she is no stranger to Obeah. But James never thought that his mother would ever use Obeah against his girlfriend. Well, a few weeks later, his girlfriend started changing. At first, it was little things. She stated that she was having the same nightmare every night. She would dream that she was standing outside of James' mother's house, except in the dream the house looked abandoned. She could hear his mother calling her from inside. Every time she walks towards the door, she would hear a woman's voice whisper to her, "Don't go inside." She would wake up sweating. Things got worse. She started finding strange things around her apartment. She found an unalived bird in front of her door once. It's possible the bird could have crashed into her door. It was a black bird and it was this ominous feeling attached to it. She also said that she could feel someone sitting on her bed at night, but she just couldn't see them. She would see the mattress sink beside her. Sometimes she would jump out of her sleep because she can feel fingers dragging through her hair. Janine became afraid to sleep by herself. She would sometimes go over to his house or he would go and spend the night with her. And eventually, James started seeing things too. One night, he was staying at her apartment, and around 3 a.m., he woke up because he heard his girlfriend talking. She was sitting upright in the bed. Her eyes were wide open, and she wasn't looking at him. She was staring at the corner. And he asked her who she was talking to, and she said, "My mother-in-law." She pointed towards the corner. There was no one there. She said to him, "Apparently, you weren't supposed to be with me." At this point, that's when James had a clue. His mother was definitely doing something, so he confronted her the following day. And his mother said, "I warned you about bringing that girl into my house." And she went on to say that she was his first love and that he would never replace her. Things with his mother was strange for a while after that, but he started investigating. He eventually found out that his mother had been collecting things connected to his girlfriend. He found a picture of her underwear that she had left at their house. She had one of her hair ties and some other miscellaneous things. He confronted his mother about it. She didn't deny it. He begged her to stop, because by then Janine was barely functioning. She stopped sleeping, she lost weight, she became paranoid. She was terrified of mirrors because she claimed that there was a woman standing behind her every time she looked into a mirror. Her apartment became a living terror. She heard knocks on her window, meanwhile she lives on the 4th floor. And oftentimes she would call him to go over there, and he would get there and there's nothing he can do to help because there's no one there. His girlfriend eventually told him that every time she's around him, it gets worse. And at this point, she was at no capacity to take care of herself, let alone be in a relationship. Janine's family came down and they moved her away. That was pretty much the end of their relationship. Janine changed her number, has no idea where Janine left to. But after over a year, he heard from some mutual friends that Janine was okay. But he doesn't know whether it's a coincidence or not. But after Janine recovered, his mother winded up passing away. Before she passed, he spoke to her about Janine again, and his mother had absolutely no remorse. He says he's moved on, he has a new girlfriend, but he still thinks about Janine, but worse, how his mother ruined that relationship. He's having a hard time forgiving her in death. Anyway, that was the end of that story. I'm beating the part 2 allegations. Make sure you leave a comment down below letting me know what type of stories that you want to hear. Your favorite Haitian homegirl.
The ghost of my brother-in-law revealed my husband's infidelity. So this lady says that she never intended on sharing this story because just reliving it really hurts her so much. But if there is a takeaway of this, it's that your loved ones who have passed are definitely still looking out for you. So this lady says that at that point in time, her and her husband were about to celebrate their 10th year anniversary, but 4 months before the party happened, a tragedy hit the family. Her husband's uncle, who was only 34 years old, had died tragically in a car accident. Her and her husband were really close to this uncle, so him passing away was so devastating. For weeks, that's all the family could talk about. Everybody was so upset, and even family reunions were just never the same again. Now, she says that ever since the day that he passed away, a really weird vibe entered her home. She started having sleep paralysis episodes, and at the foot of her bed, she would see 3 inhumane beings and that they were whispering things. She explains how the vibe in her house became suffocating, that even her dogs would be staring at nothing in the hallway and that they would start growling at things. Mind you, her dogs had never done that before, and she would always go and check and there would be nothing there. So on one particular night, she woke up from sleep and she went into the kitchen just to get a glass of water, and as she's drinking the water, she sees that there is a shadow right next to her couch. Her body went into immediate shock and she was staring at this figure, but then she started recognizing who the figure was, and it was the uncle who had just passed away. She was looking right at his face. She can tell the features. She knew it was him. He looked almost like if he was worried. So when she had initially gone to the kitchen to get water, she did bring her phone with her. She says that he is looking at her and he started giving her signals. First, he pointed at a picture of her husband on the wall. Then he pointed at her phone, and then he started hitting his heart on his chest. She remembers thinking in that moment that he was asking for empathy, or that he was telling her that something was hurting. Like, that's the vibe that she felt from what he was like pointing and touching his heart. Again, he started pointing at her phone very urgently. So she looks at her phone and she looks back up, and he is no longer in that living room. In that moment, she thought to herself, is he trying to tell me that something's gonna happen to my husband? Like, is my husband sick? Like, she just kept thinking maybe something was gonna be wrong with her husband. She didn't know what to make of it. However, 2 weeks after that happens, the same uncle came to her in a dream. In her dream, they were in her backyard on this bench where they would always sit at when he was alive, when they would want to have conversations or just talk about anything. She remembers that he looked at her with a lot of sadness in his eyes, and he finally told her something that basically changed her life forever. Mija, your husband is cheating on you with somebody really close. After that, she immediately wakes up and her intuition just wouldn't leave her alone. She knew her husband's password to the phone and he knew hers, but she would never actually go through his phone. That very day, he was outside washing the cars and he left his phone in the living room. And she looked out there just making sure he wasn't gonna come into the house, and she goes and gets the phone. In that very moment, a notification pops up and it is the wife of her husband's cousin. In the text, this girl was telling her husband how much she missed him. At this point, her hands are shaking and she decided to open up that text feed. They have had a secret relationship for years. She was disgusted by her husband because she was reading things that he would say about her that were just so fucked up. And how the following month they were planning a vacation together when her husband was getting some kind of bonus at work. She was in complete shock. She couldn't believe that this was happening to her. She couldn't believe that the person that she had built so much with would betray her and for this long. She immediately starts recording everything with her phone, getting all the evidence that she needs to get a divorce from this motherfucking bitch. She gets all her shit and she goes to her parents' house. She divorced that guy for sure. And being safe at her parents' house, she finally realized why everything was happening. The sleep paralysis with these things that were whispering things she didn't understand, the way her dogs are growling at nothing in the hallway, the apparition. The uncle, he didn't come to scare her. Till this day, she is not able to explain what happened, but she knows that he was able to find the way to tell her what was happening. She is so grateful for him, and she almost feels like he used all the energy that he could to like warn her, to tell her, because imagine if he hadn't, she might still be living this really fucked up life that she didn't even know about. This is so crazy, but yeah, like, can you imagine? That was his family having her back. That means that this motherfucker was nasty. Nasty. He probably did worse things than that. But what do you guys think? Would you guys want for your loved one to come and tell you if something was happening?
I know you lot love your Irish legends, so I said I'd give you one from more recently. Have you ever heard of the Mayo footballer's curse? This refers to Gaelic football and not soccer, by the way. So, in 1951...
Is that more like rugby?
No. In 1951, Mayo footballers won the All-Ireland Championship for the second year in a row, beating County Meath. On their travels home, the bus passed a funeral procession taking place. Instead of quieting down and paying their respects, the Mayo team decided to continue shouting and cheering after their victory and overtook the funeral. Enraged, the priest at the scene placed a curse on the Mayo football team, saying that the county would never win another All-Ireland football championship so long as the members of the 1951 team are still alive.
Oh, wow.
75 years later, Mayo have been in 11 All-Ireland football finals and have lost every single one, including a replay match they lost to by a single point. The final member of the team, Mick Loftus, died in 2023 at the fine age of 93. This weekend, Sunday the 26th of July, 2026, Mayo will take on County Kerry in the All-Ireland football final, their first final since the last member of the 1951 squad has passed.
Oh, interesting.
Will the curse be lifted? We'll see on Sunday.
Wednesday, Sunday.
Yeah.
Oh, fine.
Thanks so much for reading my story. I'd absolutely die if I heard this on the pod. I love you both so much and keep being fabulous. Lots of love from Ema.
This photo was taken in a very well-known plaza in my city. It was taken directly from the security cameras that are placed around the plaza. This was during closing time, after hours, when there were no customers in the plaza. Whatever was caught on camera to this day remains unidentified. This video was taken in a rural part of Mexico. It shows three men sitting outside what is presumably their place of work, and it appears to be late at night since there's no one else around. The men are joking around and talking when one of them notices a figure in the distance, seemingly walking in their direction. This figure is believed to be La Llorona, whose spirit is known to wander Mexico at night.
No, por favor, usted para que no lo queremos ahorita. ¿Dónde, güey? No mames, no. Aguanta, pues, aguanta.
This photo was captured with a Samsung U340 cell phone. I don't remember the exact circumstances, but the man who took it lives on a Native American reservation in North Dakota, a place filled with spiritual energy. I grew up nearby, where tragedies were far too common. I've known the photographer for most of my life, and I can say with certainty that he would never have had the ability or the knowledge to fake something like this.
So Brian's grandfather and father owned the local funeral home. Growing up, Brian didn't see anything weird about dead people. He was used to it. Since he was a baby, this was all he knew. One night, Brian's 11 years old. His parents have to go to town. While they're in town, they get a bad storm, and Brian hears the tornado warnings. Brian was always told anytime they have a tornado, go into the basement, hide in the crawl space, so that's what he did. Brian crawls down into the crawl space, and from where he's sitting, he can see a body laying on the table in the embalming room. And the power goes out. He can't see nothing. He can still hear the tornado warnings going off. He closes the little door, just sits there and waits, hoping that the alarms will stop soon. Brian's more scared of the tornado than he is of the dead bodies because he's been raised around these bodies all his life. Out of his 11 years of being alive, Brian gets this uneasy feeling. Something's wrong. He feels like he's being watched, even though he knows he's all alone. So Brian's sitting on the floor with his head in his hands when he hears a scratching sound on the crawl space door right beside his head. The scratching gets louder and louder, and Brian thinks, oh my God, I forgot my dog Bandit out in this storm. He's scratching to get in. So he cracks the door and sticks his finger out and says, Bandit, is that you? And he felt something bite down on his fingers. That bite hurt, and Brian was like, Bandit, why would you bite me like that? What is wrong with you? So he closed the door back and didn't let Bandit in. Seconds later, he can hear Bandit barking at the front door. He then realizes, wait a minute, if Bandit's outside at the front door, then what was just at this door biting on my finger? So he cracked the door open, and when the lightning flashed, Brian notices this dead person's arm is now hanging off the table. So he squints to look a little harder, and when it flashes again, he sees a leg is hanging off the table. He's a kid. He's starting to get really scared. He's tearing up. He's about to cry when he hears someone call out his name. Brian, come out, son, we're home. It sounded just like his mama's voice, so he called out to her, Mama, I'm down here. So he cracked the door open, and when the lightning flashed, he could see the dead body was now on all fours crawling towards him. Brian slammed the door back shut and said, Mama, I'm down here, come down here. But nobody came. Then the tornado alarm stopped, and he thought, okay, maybe the storm is about over. Then he hears his name being called right there at the crawl space door. It said, Brian, let me in. And the voice went from a high-pitched Brian down to a very deep, Brian, let me in. He just knew that wasn't his mama. This was something really bad, and better not open that door. The wind was roaring, the ground was shaking. He knew the train was coming. It was about to hit. As that tornado approaches, the windows break out in the basement, and the wind starts to pull the door open. He can see out of the door, and now this dead body, demon, whatever it is standing within a few feet of the door. And every time he looks out, this thing's getting closer to him. The last time the wind snatched the door open, it was right there. They made direct eye contact. This thing's eyes was solid black with a white dot in the middle. It was pure evil. He could feel it. And his gut was screaming at him, do not let it in. Then its face began to change into his mom, his dad, his grandpa, his dead grandma, and it sounded like them when it said open the door. But Brian wasn't budging. He didn't know if this thing was trying to scare him, possess him, or take him, but either way, he was not letting go of that door. He pulled back with everything he had and held that damn door shut until the storm was over. Once the tornado was gone, his parents come running down the stairs. They pull him out the crawl space like, are you okay? And he is just sitting there shaking. They think he's scared because of the tornado, but he was not. It was because of what he saw. Brian said what scared him the most out of everything. After he came out of that crawl space, he asked his dad, who was that laying on the embalming room table? His daddy said, there ain't nobody there, son. We haven't had a body in days. And when he looked over, there was no one laying there. Brian knew right then something had visited him that night. Something wanted him to know it was there, and he didn't think it was a good spirit.
Walmarts are surprisingly one of these places that are super haunted. People have experiences there all the time. And it's not just one specific location. There are many haunted Walmarts across the country. Now, there's a Walmart in Nashville, Tennessee that the locals call the Cursed Walmart. The reason behind that is because there's this old legend that this Walmart was built on top of a Native American burial ground. And not only that, it's believed this same exact piece of land was home to a small battle during the Civil War where many people had lost their lives. And since then, there have been many strange reports of items being violently thrown off the shelf, people hearing disembodied voices, seeing apparitions of people in Civil War uniforms or Native Americans. And there has even been some really, really strange stuff that has happened at this Walmart. And supposedly there was a story from an employee who worked there. They worked third shift when the store would close at 11 p.m. And one night when they were working, they were stocking the shelf when they began to hear someone in the other aisle. They were talking in some sort of gibberish, almost some language that this worker didn't understand. And it sounded like they were going back and forth, pacing down this aisle. And it began to become very loud and erratic. So this worker thought maybe something was wrong. They go around to the other side of this aisle and they see this old lady. She's hunched over, she's her hands cupped. She has sort of this shawl over her head. She's got her head down and she's sort of shuffling along, walking back and forth in the aisle. Well, the store was closed. No one's supposed to be there. So he goes and gets his manager. When the manager comes, they can't find this lady. So they start looking around the store for her. And finally, they see her moving down one of the aisles. They begin to follow her. She comes out to the middle of the store. She stops right in like this main aisle. And they said she started to scream. And she let out this inhumanly scream. And she began to wave her hands in the air. And they both witnessed this woman disappear right before their own eyes. And he said this wasn't the beginning of the strange encounters he had working at that Walmart. So there was this door in the back of the store, right where the loading docks were. He said it was a utility closet, or so he thought at the time. And he said every time he would walk by this utility closet, he would hear the sounds of these moans and these groans. He would hear sort of like someone banging on the door. He could hear voices in there saying, let me out, get me out of here. And each time he would go and tell his manager, him and his manager would go and look, and they would find this utility closet completely empty. Until one day, he's moving this pallet in the back of the store, and he notices the door is open to this utility closet. And standing next to it is this young Native American boy. He said this boy turned around, walked back into the utility closet. But as he turned, he was missing half his face. He said he ran out of that store and he quit that day. This is one of the many eerie encounters people have had at the cursed Walmart. So, have you ever been to a Walmart that you might have thought was haunted or had a strange encounter at a Walmart?
When a spirit sits on your bed, it's often trying to convey a message. Now, these are usually the spirits of a loved one or someone that you knew, right? And this is their way of saying, hey, I'm still here, or trying to let you know that something is going to happen, or everything is going to be all right, or you should make that decision. Now, when you think about it, what do we do when we talk to someone? We sit on their bed, right? Usually on the corner. Or this could be a comforting thing. Now, I had heard the story about this girl who every night she would wake up and feel like something was sitting on the corner of her bed. And in the morning when she would wake up, she would notice that the covers were kind of double folded around her. And she didn't really think much of this until one day she's talking to her aunt. And she tells her about these things that happened to her at night. Her aunt just starts bawling and crying. And she goes, when your mother, who passed away when she was a little girl, She would come in my bedroom when I was upset or I was sad. She would sit on the corner of my bed, and after I would fall asleep, she would fold the cover in like a double fold over the top of me. So, as you can see, this is her mother trying to communicate that she's still there with her.
Want to start streaming today? Tap the Go Live link below to test it now.
How many times have you woken up in the middle of the night and you'll see a pile of clothes, but to you it appears as like a shadow person or, you know, a man standing there. But then when you do a double take and look back, it's a pile of clothes. What if I were to tell you that actually was a spirit? You were seeing a ghost, but your mind, right, in order to make sense of what you just seen, found something similar for you to focus on to give you the illusion that, right, you didn't see a ghost. We see ghosts all the time, we just don't realize it. There was a girl, and one day she's laying in her bed. When she looks up, her eyes kind of adjust, and she sees a man standing at the foot of her bed. But when she rubs her eyes again, she looks closer. It's just a pile of clothes. Every night, right, she wakes up and she keeps thinking that pile of clothes is a person. But she realizes, you know, it's just a pile of clothes, so she starts just not paying it any attention. Then one night she wakes up, she sees the pile of clothes, thinks it's a person, and realizes, I have to get up and go to the bathroom. So when she gets out of bed and she walks towards this pile of clothes, she kind of pushes on it. But that's when she realizes she is feeling a chest, and she could feel like arms, and she could feel the muscle on the arms, and she realizes, like, wait a second, there is a person standing there. And when she runs over to her door and turns the light on, it's just a pile of clothes there. She goes and, you know, throws the clothes down. There's nothing there. So, you see, we could be seeing spirits all the time. We're just not fully aware to it because our mind is trying to rationalize for us and keep us from experiencing anything supernatural.
This story is about a man that ended up summoning a jinn and now has absolutely no idea how to get rid of it. One of you guys sent me this story. You said I can use your actual name, so we're gonna call you Omar. A few months back, Omar was up late one night just kind of scrolling through TikTok when he came across this video that said that there was a specific chant that you can say in order to summon a jinn. He said it was some sort of like incantations, ritual type of thing. Without even realizing it, he started saying this thing out loud. After about the third time of saying it, absolutely nothing happened, so he decided that to just kind of move on. That night, after he went to sleep, he got woken up by a very loud, sharp scream coming from his left ear. He kind of jumped up, looked around the room, didn't really see anything, and decided to just go back to sleep. Now, the second time that he tried to go to bed, he got woken up by what sounded like a laughter coming from a woman. The laugh almost sounded like a mocking type of laugh, like he was being made fun of. He once again looked around the room and couldn't see where it was coming from. Tried to shake it off, thinking that maybe he was just hearing things because he had gotten it in his head that he may hear something. The next morning, everything was fine, but the next couple of days, he felt like something was following him. Like something around him just felt dark. He continued to have these crazy nightmares of him just being in this dark room, surrounded by this like hallway, where at the end of this hallway, he would hear that same mocking laugh. Finally, Omar decided to call one of his uncles who was very familiar with like jinns and how to get rid of them. And his uncle advised him to cleanse himself. He recommended that he do a ritual bath and say this prayer. I'll put it right here. Omar went ahead and did just that. He also had like incense burning. He was praying, like trying to get whatever this thing was off of him. That seemed to work for a little bit, and things did calm down until last night. Omar said he woke up at exactly 3 a.m. to that same laughter that he was hearing before of the woman mocking him. Omar does plan on contacting his uncle once again. I think they're gonna seek like even more professional type help. But it's just crazy to think that something as simple as like a little TikTok video of him just chanting something blindly could have such like permanent consequences. Have you guys ever been in contact with a jinn? Have any suggestions for him to read? Because he'll be watching this video. You can definitely comment down below.
In Nepal's folklore, there's a woman called Gichgandi, better known as a weeping witch. They're said to be young women that were unhappy with their marriage and later took their own lives deep in forests. They're said to hunt men around their area to fulfill their grudges. This incident happened in Nepal to my friend's neighbor about a year ago when him and his friends were on a hiking trip. We'll call him Sam. After their hiking, Sam and his friends were packing up to leave since it was already getting dark, but then he asked his friends to wait for him while he used the bathroom. He went up the hill and his friends stayed downhill. After finishing his business, he suddenly started to hear rustling behind him and a woman crying. He decided to go even further to where the crying was coming from, when suddenly he saw the witch. He quickly took a photo and a video, but the flashlight in his hand suddenly fell down. He tried to pick it up in a panic, but suddenly he felt a huge scratch on his back, like nails digging into his skin. He quickly turned around to see the witch right behind him. It had been quite some time since Sam hadn't returned to his friends, and they started looking for him. They eventually found him laying unconscious on the ground. He suffered serious injuries on his back and his arms and later had to go get stitches. This is the photo that he was able to capture.
I get scared talking about the Hat Man. It always gives me chills because there are so many people who report seeing the same exact entity. They describe it as this shadowy black figure with this wide-brimmed hat and these red glowing eyes. And often they are seen at night in people's rooms watching them. And so many people have drawn depictions and so many people have had encounters with these things that there has to be something going on. Now, a lot of people think that this goes back to like the early 2000s, to an urban legend that started online. But I actually started to track a lot of these stories. There's stories going back all the way to the 1800s. So who or what is Hat Man? Well, there's a possibility we might actually know his name. Now, this story comes out of Akron, Ohio from the 1800s. There was this man named Charlie. Charlie said when he was younger, he lived on this farm with his grandfather. And he said there was this man in town that everyone called John. You hardly ever seen him. He was always inside his home, and he would only come out at night. And when he did come out, he had this black cloak wrapped around him and this wide-brimmed hat that he would wear, and he would mysteriously move through the darkness. Well, one day they discovered in town that this cemetery had been dug up and that there were all of these bodies that were missing. And one night they happened to catch John moving through the cemetery. So they follow him home back to his house. They grab him and they go inside. And they're shocked to discover all of the corpses from the graveyard lying throughout his place. And so when they asked John, why did you take these bodies? He told them, I work for the devil and I was taking souls. And so he was tried and he was eventually hung. But the story didn't end there. There were many people who reported still seeing this cloaked figure with this wide brim hat and these bright red eyes. And it's interesting because if you go all the way to the 1960s, there's another similar story in Ohio. There happened to be this young man who said when he was younger, he remembered one night waking up to a cold chill. And as he looked at the foot of his bed, said standing there was this man. He was some sort of shadowy figure with this big wide hat and these bright red eyes. So he didn't move, he didn't do anything, he just stared at him. He said every night he would see this entity. He said that's when it started to talk to him with this very deep, muffled voice. So he told him his name was John, and that he had lived in the 1800s on this farm, and that he had came back. And so this young boy, he started to notice every morning he would wake up in the fields outside this house. When he would come inside, he would tell his parents like he didn't know what happened. He didn't know how he got outside. His parents at the time, they thought maybe he had this active imagination and he was sleepwalking. So he said many years passed and he grew older. And he said this one summer he came home. Well, at this time, his parents had another child and it was around 13. And he said his brother, who had Down syndrome,
came running up to him when he first sees him come in the house. And he says, I made a new friend. I made a new friend. And he goes, oh, that's nice. You know, what's his name? His brother says to him, his name is John. And instantly this man's jaw just dropped because he remembered his childhood friend named John. So he asked his mom, what is he talking about? His mom said, oh, he has this imaginary friend like you did when you were little. She said, look, he's drawn all of these pictures of him. When he goes and looks at the pictures, he sees this shadowy figure with the big wide brim hat and the bright red eyes. And he knew that what he'd seen when he was younger was very much real. So what do you think? Have you seen the Hat Man? Is he real or simply an urban legend?
The Morris Jumel Mansion was purchased during the colonial period, and the Morris family is who purchased it. It housed the family, the servants, and several enslaved people. This house was absolutely massive, spanning 50 city blocks, but the Morris family were loyalists. They did not want independence from Britain. They would even house the British Army, and it became the headquarters for the British Army during the Revolutionary War. But weirdly, it was also used by George Washington later in the war as the headquarters. After the war, it was sold to the Earl family, and they changed it into a hotel and bar. They sold it in 1810 to the Jumel family, and they turned it into their private residence. Here's where things get interesting. Eliza Jumel was the daughter of the man who owned this house, and she fell in love with Aaron Burr. Yes, founding father Aaron Burr. This is so messy, and I love when history gets messy. Eliza and Aaron fell in love, but Eliza was already married, but as luck would have it, I guess, her husband passed away in a very tragic farming accident. And soon after, Eliza and Aaron were married. But the thing is a lot of people speculated that Eliza's first husband's accident wasn't really an accident, but it was never proven to be not an accident. The thing is that Aaron Burr didn't have a lot of money. Eliza was the one who had the money, but Aaron had really fine taste and he liked to spend her money, so their marriage quickly soured, ending in a divorce. Now, Eliza was super petty, and this is my favorite part of the story because, again, it just shows that in today's day, we can always be pettier, because when Eliza was getting a divorce from Aaron Burr, she went to Alexander Hamilton Jr., who was Alexander Hamilton's son, who Aaron had just killed in a duel, and asked him to help her through the divorce. Again, I just love how messy history is. So as you can tell, this house has seen a lot of history, and it's not a far reach to think that this house might actually be haunted now. Many people have claimed to hear disembodied voices and footsteps in Aaron Burr's room, leading people to believe that he's still there. Now, these footsteps happen at all times of the day, so it's not just something that happens at night. In fact, a paranormal investigator team came and investigated the house, I guess, and they claim to have caught some EVPs on recording. Some people hear "I love you," and other people have heard "they're laughing at you." Eliza Jumel is also someone that people claim is still haunting the place. A group of kids came to visit the Jumel mansion, and they claim to have seen a woman who was very similar to Eliza and dressed in older clothes, I guess, screaming at them to shut up. But anytime someone has claimed to have seen her, she's always dressed in white. Some other people have claimed to see two males, ghosts, fighting, and they often suspect that this is Eliza's first husband and Aaron Burr, and that they're still fighting for Eliza in the afterlife. But what are your thoughts on it? Do you think that this place could actually be haunted, or is it all just in your imagination? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments, and follow for more spooky things.
A follower sent me this story about her childhood best friend who wanted to be famous so badly that she eventually tried to sell her soul for it. And according to her, something accepted the offer, but it never made her famous. It just started taking things from her. And before I get into this story, as always, there's no way for me to verify any of it. This was sent to me by a follower named Brittany, and she said that this happened to her childhood best friend several years ago. So, as always, take it as entertainment and decide for yourselves what you believe, because Brittany herself still isn't entirely convinced that what happened was supernatural, but she also can't disprove it either. She just knows that after her friend tried this ritual, she watched someone that she'd known almost her entire life slowly become unrecognizable. And Brittany called her friend Elizabeth. They grew up together, same neighborhood, same schools, same group of friends. And from the time that Elizabeth was a teenager, there was one thing that she wanted more than anything else, and that was to be famous. Not necessarily like rich, but just famous. Brittany said Elizabeth used to joke that she'd rather millions of people know her name and hate her than live an ordinary life where nobody knew that she even existed out of their small little town. And at first, it seemed kind of harmless. Elizabeth tried acting, nothing happened. She tried singing, nothing happened as well. Then social media really exploded, and Elizabeth became convinced that this was finally her ticket, out. And this was her big opportunity. And for years, she posted consistently skits, story times, makeup videos, trends, live streams, get ready with me, you name it. She bought better cameras, better lighting, better equipment. I mean, she changed her appearance. She studied successful creators obsessively, but nothing ever worked. And a video would get, 300 views, 200 views, 80 views, and she'd gain, some followers, and then she'd lose them the following week. And Brittany said that the lack of success slowly became like an obsession with her. And Elizabeth stopped asking, how do I make better videos? And instead she would ask, like, why doesn't anybody choose me? And then one night, Brittany was at Elizabeth's apartment when Elizabeth said something that made her laugh at first. And Elizabeth said that, maybe I should just sell my soul. And Brittany laughed it off, and told her, like, oh, you're just being dramatic, cut it out. But Elizabeth didn't laugh. She told Brittany that she'd been researching it actually for quite some time. Not the Hollywood version where, the devil appears and, you shake hands, sign a contract, and, Shabbat Shalom, you're on your way, whatever. No, none of that crap. She had apparently found an old forum post and occult discussions claiming that if you wanted something badly enough, you could make an offering. And Brittany immediately told her not to mess with it. And Elizabeth's response was, at this point, what do I have to lose? And Brittany would remember that, those words for years, because apparently quite a few weeks had passed at this point. Then Elizabeth called Brittany at around 2 a.m, and she was absolutely terrified. And Elizabeth was telling her that, I did something really stupid, and Brittany immediately knew what she was talking about and what she meant. Elizabeth refused to explain exactly what had happened, but she did admit that she performed some kind of ritual alone in her bedroom. And she'd written, what she wanted on a piece of paper: recognition, success, millions of people knowing her face. And supposedly she offered whatever was required in return. And she told Brittany that nothing happened at first. There were no voices, no shadows, no mysterious figure appearing in the room. So eventually Elizabeth felt stupid. She cleaned up everything, and she went to bed. But that night she had a horrible nightmare. Elizabeth dreamed that she was lying on her back inside of this narrow dirt tunnel, and she couldn't sit up, she couldn't turn around. All she could do was crawl backwards while something very strongly held onto her ankles and slowly was dragging her deeper and deeper underground. She couldn't see whatever had her, but she could hear it breathing. And every time that she tried digging her fingers into the dirt to stop herself, she heard people whispering her name from somewhere beneath her at the bottom of that dirt tunnel. Thousands of voices. Elizabeth woke up screaming. Her ankles hurt so badly she could barely stand. And Brittany dismissed it as nightmare because, caused by what she had done. Sometimes when you think about something a lot, you have a bad dream, until it happened again and again the next night. And same tunnel, same hands around her ankles, same voices, except this time they were a little bit closer. And over the next few weeks, Elizabeth began changing. She barely slept. Brittany said that her friend started developing dark circles under her eyes, and she started losing weight rapidly, and her skin started to look like she was deteriorating. And then her hair started coming out, not just like a few strands here and there, in the shower. Elizabeth would run her fingers through her hair and clumps of it would come out. And then her gums started bleeding, and sometimes she would wake up in the morning with dried red stuff all around her mouth. And she would go to the doctors, and Brittany said that there were a bunch of tests done, appointments and different explanations were considered, but from what Elizabeth had told her, nothing seemed to explain what was happening, and there was no apparent reason for it to be all happening at once. And then came the smell. Elizabeth began complaining about the smell of wet soil and rotten eggs in her apartment. And to Brittany, she smelled it too. She described it as walking into a basement after a heavy rain, except Elizabeth lived several floors up. And then one afternoon, Brittany came over and she found Elizabeth standing completely still in the hallway. She was staring at the floor outside of her bedroom, and there was dirt on the carpet. Just a small amount though, and it was a thin trail of dark soil running from beneath Elizabeth's bed across the bedroom and stopping right at the doorway. Brittany assumed that Elizabeth, had tracked it in, definitely possible, but Elizabeth insisted that she hadn't, and she never left the apartment that day. And that's when she finally told Brittany something that she'd been keeping from her. The nightmares had changed, but, she wasn't just being dragged through the tunnel anymore. Now she was reaching the end of it, and there was something waiting there. And Elizabeth never described exactly what it looked like. She only said that it was crouched because the tunnel was not tall and wide enough for it to stand. And every night it was facing away from her until that final nightmare. That night, Elizabeth reached the bottom of the tunnel. The thing was waiting, and it turned around to see her. Elizabeth woke up screaming so loudly that, her neighbors called the police. And according to Brittany, from that night forward, Elizabeth refused to sleep in her bedroom, and she started sleeping with every light on, and, the apartment, everything was turned on, TV, you name it. Then strange things began happening while she was awake. She'd hear scratching underneath, her bed. She would hear scratching underneath the dining room table while she's eating breakfast. Her phone would start recording, even though she never touched it. She'd hear what sounded like somebody was crawling through the walls at night and during the day. She can never explain any of it. And the strangest part, her content suddenly started doing a lot better. A few videos broke hundreds of thousand views, a couple hit over 1 million, her followers started to go up, everything started to climb. But now she was paying a price for it. And Brittany thought that she would be excited, but she wasn't. She's like, if I just want to give it all back, I'm done with this. I don't want this anymore. And she ended up having to move away. And Brittany, since that time, Brittany has not heard from her in over 2 years. She deleted all of her content, she stopped posting everything. She just threw everything away, and she just walked away from everything. And Brittany has not seen Elizabeth since. And sometimes when you make a deal with something like that, you're not prepared for it to come to collect, because this thing, whatever it was, it came to collect, and she was not ready for it. I mean, she would wake up with dirt packed under her fingernails. I mean, like stuff was getting real. So, I don't know. You got to be careful what you ask for, because sometimes you are going to get it, and whoever or whatever you asked for it is going to come and give it to you. Let me know what you guys think in the comments.
I caught this on my bathroom mirror when I was 15. It showed up on the mirror after fogging from showering. I never really had any paranormal experiences other than feeling watched in my house as a child. However, at the time that I caught this photo, I had been having sleep paralysis pretty much nightly and was frequently seeing and hearing creepy things. I found an old photo of my late grandfather with one of his children, but noticed a face behind him. When I asked my mom who that was, she said she'd never noticed it before, but it creeps her out. She doesn't know who it is, and after asking her siblings, none of them know either. Apparently, I'm the first person to look at this photo and look past the two people in the front. Everyone who has seen the photo agrees that the face is rather off-putting, to say the least. I visited the old Melbourne jail back in April of 2014. Today, I was reminded of this photo that I had taken back then because it popped up on my Facebook memories. I'm convinced it shows a ghostly figure on the middle floor by the staircase. It looks like a woman with her hair in a bun wearing some sort of cloak.
Let's read a scary Reddit story. I am obsessed with reading people's paranormal encounters on Reddit, and I want to share some of the scariest stories I've come across. Today's story has to do with a possible glitch in the Matrix, and it's pretty creepy, so get ready. About 15 years ago, in the middle of summer, I was hanging out with friends on Venice Beach. It was about 9 p.m. when we got there, and we decided to walk on Santa Monica Pier, not for any particular reason, just burning time and hanging out. I remember it was me, my friend A, and his friend M. They bought a bottle of Southern Comfort, and I was stuck being the DD, so I was sober for the walk. On our way down the beach, all the shops and restaurants were closed or closing, so the area was starting to clear out. Those who know the area know there's a row of housing once you clear the tourist section. About 40 minutes in, a building caught our attention. In my memory, I remember it sticking out from the fancier housing. It was flat-faced and had a few windows on the second story and a single door in the front. The door, however, was slightly raised from the ground, as if the steps had been removed, so you had to take a big step up to get to it. The door, I remember, was also rather narrow, so it couldn't have been a business. The house itself was a dark salmon color, but it could have been lighter since it was lit up by street lamps. The door was open. There were no signs and no one around, but we were curious and looked in. It was a long foyer made narrow by vanities and cupboards lined against both walls. The vanities and cupboards had all sorts of trinkets on them, and Christmas lights hung along the narrow hallway. Against our better judgment, we entered. I was first, being the sober one, followed by A and then M. At this point, they sobered up pretty quickly as we walked further into the house. Black lights covered the room, and there were music boxes and toys scattered along the surfaces. I don't know why, but it felt like it took forever to get to the end while we were walking. At the end, there was a door, and on the door was the only sign or indicator of any kind. It said, "Welcome to the dollhouse. Please come in," with an arrow pointing at the doorknob. Now, I was born and raised in California, and I've seen some weird things, art projects, public performances, flash mobs. This was strange, but nothing that intimidated me, so I reached out and opened the door. The door opened about 2/3 of the way, and I saw it led down a flight of stairs into darkness. Before any of us could say anything or even think about taking a step forward, a music box started playing. At that point, our fight or flight instinct kicked in, and all of us turned right around and fled back out toward the car. The whole way there, we didn't say anything, and they abandoned the bottle of Southern Comfort. We had no idea what that was, and for a moment, it didn't seem real at all. Not a single person was there. There were all the weird decorations, a set of stairs leading down into darkness, and the random music box. We all recalled the same details. After sleeping on it, A and I headed back to the beach, I believe no more than a few days later, to make sure of what we had seen. We took the same route, both of us were sober, and we couldn't find it. No weird, oddly placed house or business that we could have missed, no flyers for an art event, no construction, nothing. It was like it never happened. A&M had been a little drunk, but I was completely sober. I don't hallucinate and I have no history of hallucinating. I'm still friends with A, and every once in a while we talk about it. We remember all the same details, right down to the music box playing. I even remember feeling and hearing the old hardwood flooring under my feet and the smell of dust. I've checked Google Maps and couldn't find anything resembling a building like that. I have no idea where that was or why it seems that only we could recall such a place. I've checked Google Maps and couldn't find anything resembling the building. My friend is a bit more of a mystic than me and suggested that it could have been a pocket dimension. I am a reasonable person and I like to find logic in things. I am ready to accept that any investigation I did could be faulty, but I have no answers. Do you think this person experienced a glitch in the Matrix? If you or someone you know have ever experienced a glitch in the Matrix or any other kind of paranormal encounter, please send me your stories. I would love to read them on here. And as always, have a great day. Bye.
8 years ago, I bought this abandoned ghost town you see behind me, and it came with over a dozen buildings, 30 miles of mine shafts, and all sorts of cool things. So let me show you some of my favorite spots around town. This is called the Hoist House, and inside that building there's a mine shaft that goes 900 feet straight down. And starting in the 1800s, they pulled almost $1 billion worth of minerals out of the mine that's in there. So I'll go give you a look. This is called the Union Mine, and this shaft goes 900 feet straight down. So I'll show you what that looks like. You can probably only see about 80 or 90 feet down, but that goes 10 times deeper than what you can see. But this is what built the whole town. Well, let me show you more. This is where they used to store the dynamite in town, but these days, it's a hidden library. All of this wood I brought in from the mine and put in these shelves, and all of the books related to mining, and we have different dynamite boxes. And it's a really fun place to get away from the world. This building was originally a brothel called Lola's Palace of Pleasure, owned by a woman named Lola Travis. And right next to it was one of the original assay offices. And this is where you came to determine whether your ore was worth any money. They would come in here, bring their sample. The guy behind the counter would crush it up, melt it down, tell you how much silver was in your claim. And here is where you learned whether you were rich or not. And I don't know if it was coincidence that the brothel was right. This is one of the original general stores, and these days I made it into a museum. So anything that I find in the mines or in the different buildings goes in here, and it's just a time capsule of what helped build this town, from the different minerals to the different tools they used and everything else. It's definitely one of my favorite places. This is the theater in town. It used to be a mechanics garage, just that middle building. But over time, the wings were added. And these days, it has some really cool movie theater seats in it. So one day, I'm going to make this back into look like an old Western theater, and we'll host movie nights in here. This is my house, and originally it was built in the 1870s for the original owner of the town, a guy named Mortimer Belshaw. And it's right in the center of town where I can keep an eye on everything. Plus, I got this great view down into the valley. And this building will eventually be the heartbeat of the town. This is a rebuilding of a hotel that was originally built in 1871 that stood here. And long term, there'll be a bar and restaurant downstairs, 6 rooms upstairs, 2 more rooms over here, and a huge deck to look at the valley. And long term, my hope is to turn Cerro Gordo into a place that people can come up, visit, enjoy the natural beauty, learn the history for many years to come. There's a lot more here, and so if you're interested, I have a YouTube channel called Ghost Town Living, or you can come visit. We're open every day from 9 to 5.
Okay, the room that stood out to me the most is the library here. There's a man, tall, thin, white. Is it called whittling? Where there's the wood and a knife, and he's like kind of chipping away at it. I don't know if that's the word. He's been watching what this gentleman is doing with the property. What he's saying to me is he's keeping an eye on things. He's watching him. And I'm not sure why, but there's obviously a very territorial presence he has, and he's being very, very clear that he wants to watch what he does with it and make sure that he doesn't do anything wrong. So what would constitute wrong to this spirit? He doesn't want a lot of people to come through here. So if the gentleman that bought the property may have to remove this spirit if he notices his business is not doing as well, because this spirit definitely doesn't want a lot of people there, wants things to stay exactly as they are, doesn't want to make a lot of changes, and he's not super friendly, so he might become a nuisance after a while. His presence may not be helpful. Now, the other thing is he may not show himself too much because he doesn't want his presence known. He doesn't want people to come and see him or know that he's there. He's keeping himself very private. Yet, in the same breath, he is speaking to me. I'm not sure why. This man was a part of this land way before they even started building on it. Way before even the history that is talked about from the original poster. This person that I'm seeing is way before even that history existed. This guy's been here for a while and is going to be tough to remove if needed. His name is like Jared. He didn't have a family. He had cattle. He had horses and lived on that land in like a very small space that had since been removed. He was a cattle rancher. That's what he called himself. Likes the isolation, liked being isolated, and didn't like having a lot of people around him, never had a family, never was married, nothing like that. He might be a tough one.
Here are 3 paranormal stories that I got in my DMs. Let's go. This first story comes to us from Roarer. This story is actually a famous story in the Philippines. One night back in the 90s, a family heard a knock on their door. The storyteller was still a kid back then. Let's call him Eric because I can't recall his real name. One rainy night, while Eric and his family were about to sleep, someone knocked on their door. They noticed someone standing outside because they could see a shadow through the gap underneath the door. They weren't expecting anyone, and it was already past midnight, so they felt uneasy. Then the person knocked again. His mother warned him not to open the door, and his father shouted, "Who's there?" But the person didn't answer. When his father asked again, "Who's there?" the person on the other side violently tried to turn the doorknob. Eric remembered it vividly because it was the scariest thing that had ever happened to him. His father grabbed a weapon and was about to open the door when they heard the person on the other side say, "Pa," before the knocking suddenly stopped. When his father finally opened the door, no one was there. They never found out what the person was about to say. Fast forward to when Eric became an adult. His father had already passed away, and Eric fell into a deep depression. During the darkest time of his life, all he wanted was to hear his dad's voice again. One rainy night while he was sleeping, he dreamed about their old house from when he was a child. It was also raining, and he found himself standing by the door. He knocked, but no one answered. He knocked again, and this time he heard a very familiar voice asking, "Who's there?" It was his dad. He froze for a moment, unable to answer because he really wanted to make sure it was his father's voice. When he heard his dad call out again, "Who's there?" he excitedly tried to open the door by turning the doorknob, but it was locked. He kept trying to turn it because all he wanted was to see his dad again. Finally, he answered, "Pa," which means dad. The moment he said it, he woke up. This next story comes to us from a Fraudu. I'm so sorry if I mispronounced that. So last summer I was staying with my sister since she recently had her baby, my nephew. It was noon, and after we ate dinner, my sister put the baby to sleep and she gave me the baby monitor in case the baby started crying, so I could go and take care of it as she went on to shower. And because the rooms of the house are separated from the living room that I was in, mind you, the baby monitor was last used when I was a baby, so it was pretty old. So as I was lying there, I heard the baby whining, but I didn't get up immediately since even in his sleep he made those noises. Right as I was about to go check on him, I heard from the monitor that someone was consoling him and telling him, "Shh." At first I thought that maybe her sister finished her shower early and she had the baby. And then I myself went into the room to check, but as I entered I saw nobody and my nephew was peacefully sleeping in his crib. And then I heard that the water was still on in the bathroom. And as I went in, my sister wasn't even close to finishing her bath. I told her I thought I heard her go in the room, but she told me she hadn't finished yet. Chills went up my spine and I was spooked to the core. Our third story comes to us from Bob. 3 years ago, my cousin and I were watching a show in the living room at my grandma's house. A couple of minutes go by and my cousin has to shower, so his mom takes him to the bathroom. While I continued watching the show, I heard a scream come from the bathroom. His mom came running out and told me to look at the window in the bathroom. When I checked, I saw a tall figure standing at the window. Its throat was slit open and I couldn't see its face because of how tall it was. Suddenly, everything went dark and the figure was in the doorway. After it vanished, we called a priest and he cleansed the house. I feel something watching me when I'm alone to this day. As always, I love these stories and I love when you DM me your experiences, so please keep sending me more. Okay, bye!
I need to tell you guys this ghost story. This story was sent into my email, and if you have any ghost stories, paranormal encounters, or scary stories that you want to share, you can send them to the email in my bio. When I was 14, we moved into the perfect house. Until that year, I was growing up bouncing from apartment to apartment, so getting this house, this was different. This was exciting. For the first time, we had a real house of our own. It was spacious. There was plenty of room for me and my little brother, and for a while, everything was just amazing. When I think back to that house now, though, I'm confused on how we missed the signs. Because over the time we lived there, all of us experienced things that we couldn't explain. I mean, we experienced so much that eventually my parents had actually had our pastor come and bless the house. These experiences weren't just one strange coincidence or a weird noise in the middle of the night or something that we can just convince ourselves had never happened. I'm 21 now, and there are still 3 things from that house that I think about. The first one happened when I was around 15. This night, sometime between 2 and 4 in the morning, I had woken up from a nightmare. I don't remember what the nightmare was about. I just remember the feeling I woke up with. Horrible feeling that someone woke you up, not just the dream. My bedroom door was always left open, and from my bed, I had a clear view down the hallway and into the living room. I reached over, grabbed a glass of water sitting beside my bed, and took a drink, and then I glanced towards the doorway. And there he was. There was a coat rack in our living room, and I'd seen it countless times before. And honestly, it used to scare me whenever I woke up in the middle of the night because in the darkness, it looked almost exactly like a person was standing there. Usually, though, I'd stare at it for a few seconds, my eyes would adjust, and I'd realize what I was looking at. But that night, there was something standing beside it. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. I stared at it as I had before, waiting for my eyes to adjust, but the longer I looked, the more clearly I could see him. It looked like a man. A very tall man. He was wearing what appeared to be a long hat, and he was so unbelievably tall that he had to bend at the neck just to fit in the home. There wasn't this evil sense that I got when I was looking at him, though. There was just this overwhelming awareness, almost, that something was standing there, watching me. That confused me, but I knew that I didn't want to wait around and figure all of that out, so I jumped out of bed and ran down the hallway to my parents' room. I woke them up and told them what I'd seen. They followed me back into the hallway, and I pointed toward the living room, but the man was gone. There was nothing there except the coat rack. My parents told me that I'd probably been dreaming, so eventually I went back to bed. But less than 30 minutes later, I woke up again, and even though I couldn't see him anymore, that feeling was still there. Like something was standing somewhere in the darkness, just outside my bedroom, watching. A few months later, we had a UFC party at the house. My dad had invited a bunch of his friends, and my grandparents were there too. It started out as a fun night. People were talking, laughing, eating, watching the fights. Our kitchen had a bar that opened to the living room area, with bar stools on the other side. And at one point, my grandfather and I were sitting on the stools talking to my dad, who was on the other side. And then something caught my attention in my peripheral vision. Someone had walked down the hallway. I glanced over, and I saw what looked like my little brother. He had brown hair, and at the time he was barely 5 feet tall. The figure walked from the back of the hallway toward my little brother's room. And I wasn't the only one who saw it. My grandfather looked over at the exact same moment. We both watched the figure disappear into the bedroom, and my dad had noticed us both turn our heads at the same time. He asked us what we were looking at, and my grandfather looked at me. We both just assumed that my little brother had simply gone into his room, but then my dad's expression changed. "He's outside," he quietly told us. My little brother had been in the backyard with the other kids. In the pool. There was absolutely no way that had been him. My grandfather and I immediately got up, walked down the hallway, and checked the bedroom. Nothing. We checked underneath the bed, in the closet. Nothing. We even checked my room, the bathroom, every closet, under every bed, my parents' room, everywhere. There was no little boy. There was no one hiding in the house. The last incident happened shortly before we moved out, and even now, years later, thinking about it makes me sick. It was around 9 at night. There was a NASCAR race that had been recorded, and my dad, my little brother, and I were getting ready to leave for my grandparents' house to watch it. At this house, we had a regular wooden front door, and in front of that was a metal screen door. My dad went outside first. My little brother was apparently already outside, getting ready to climb into the car. My dad was holding the screen door open. I was behind him, pulling the wooden door shut, when my dad suddenly scolded me. "Why would you ever do that?" I had absolutely no idea what he was talking about. I looked at him confused. I asked, "What?" He told me, "You just closed the door on your little brother." I would never intentionally slam a door on him, so now I was even more confused, and more importantly, I could see my little brother. He was standing right behind my dad, so I pointed. "He's right there." I'll never forget the look on my dad's face. My dad told me that moments earlier, he'd seen a little boy walking toward the front door. That the boy looked exactly like my little brother. Same height, same brown hair, everything. One thing that stuck out to him, though, was the boy's head was hanging down, so my dad couldn't see his face. He could only see the top of his head and his hair, and he watched this little boy walk toward the door, and the moment he reached it, I had closed the wooden door. That's why my dad had scolded me. He genuinely thought I'd watch my little brother walk toward the door and intentionally shut it in his face.
Let's read a scary story. Welcome to the Creepy Cozy Cottage, where creepy and cozy meet. So grab a plushie and get cozy. I live alone. I've lived alone for about 4 years now, and I'm pretty used to it. I actually like it most of the time. I work late, come home, eat something, watch TV for a while, then go to bed. Nothing exciting ever really happens, which is exactly how I like it. The first time I noticed the front door was open, I blamed myself. I got home around midnight, put my keys in the lock, and realized the door was already unlocked. I stood there for a second because I could have sworn I'd locked it that morning. I checked the whole house before I went to bed, but nothing was missing and nothing looked out of place, so I figured I'd just forgotten. It happened again 3 nights later. The door wasn't wide open. It was only sitting there an inch or two, like someone had pulled it shut without actually turning the lock. I checked every room again and found nothing. After that, I started checking the door twice before leaving for work. Lock, deadbolt, handle, every morning. Then it happened again and again. That's when I started getting nervous. I bought one of those cheap indoor security cameras and pointed it at the front door. For the first week, nothing happened. I actually started feeling stupid for buying it. Then, on one Tuesday, I got an alert at 3:18 in the morning. Someone had opened the door. I was watching the footage from work the next day. The hallway was completely dark, and the front door slowly opened from the inside. Nobody walked through it. It just opened by itself. I watched the video about 20 times, trying to figure out if there was some explanation I was missing. I thought maybe the lock was broken, so I called a locksmith. He checked everything and told me the door was fine. When I explained to him what was happening, he laughed and said it was probably the door frame settling. I wanted to believe him, and so I did. That night, I slept with my bedroom door locked. At exactly 3:18 a.m., I woke up. I don't know what woke me. I just remember laying there, staring at the ceiling, completely awake, when I heard the front door click downstairs. A few seconds later, I heard footsteps moving slowly through the hallway. I reached for my phone and called the police. While I was whispering to the dispatcher, the footsteps stopped. Then I heard a man's voice right outside my bedroom say, "Are you awake?" I couldn't answer. I could barely breathe. The voice came again, quieter this time. "Come on." Then there was silence. The police arrived a few minutes later and searched the entire house. Nobody was there. The officer checked the front door and told me there was no signs of forced entry. I showed him the camera footage and he watched it twice without saying anything. Then he asked me to show him my bedroom, so I did. He looked around for a while before pointing out my wardrobe. "Have you checked behind this?" he asked. I actually laughed because I thought he was joking. He wasn't. We moved the wardrobe away from the wall, and there was a narrow gap behind it, big enough for someone to squeeze through. Behind it was a section of the wall that had been cut open. There was a small space between the walls, and someone had been living in it. There was a mattress on the floor, a blanket, empty water bottles, food wrappers, and dozens of photographs, all of me, sleeping, eating, leaving for work, coming home. Some of them were years old. The officer called another unit and they searched the rest of the house. They found a way into the space from the attic. Whoever had been living there could apparently get in and out without me ever noticing. They never found him. They did find a notebook though. Most of it was just dates and times with notes about when I left for work and when I came home. The last page was different. There was only one sentence. "He knows I'm here now." I moved out the next morning. The police told me they thought whoever had been living there had probably been watching me for a very long time. They said I was lucky I hadn't been hurt.
You want to know how to see ghosts? Here's how you do it. First, you have to have your first paranormal experience. That helps you establish patterns, and your intuition will kick in. Problem is having the first experience. After that, you'll see this stuff everywhere. But there is one way that I've figured out that is very consistent, and this works best if you have light-colored eyes, like blue or green, like mine, because it takes in more light. You'll understand why in a moment. But here's what you do. You're going to go into the woods, deep into the forest. You're going to turn off all lights. But before you do that, you're going to look around and just take note of where everything is at. It's going to be important. So you turn off all the lights and you wait. Let your eyes adjust. You'll start to see the shapes of the trees. It'll be vague. It'll be kind of grainy, like TV static or something on everything. You just wait. And then you'll notice certain shadows will move. And just stay like that, watching them for a minute. Because you'll try to convince yourself at first, this is the edge of total darkness for me. My eyes are playing tricks on me. This is how it works. But then what I want you to do is you take your flashlight, whatever light source you have, you pick one of these things, point the light at it, don't turn it on you, just point it, right? When you're ready, you turn on the light. And you'll see there's nothing there. There's no bush, there's no tree, nothing. So, if your eyes are playing tricks on you, it's completely making up shapes. Now, you might say, this isn't a paranormal experience, right? Forcing your brain to hallucinate, that's not paranormal, but I promise you, you'll start to notice these things in your everyday life. It'll be out of the corner of your eye, in the corner of the room at night. And then you come back to me. And then you'll tell me there's nothing to this, that this is all just your eyes playing tricks on you.
What would you do if your 6-year-old kept seeing a woman with a ponytail that touched the ceiling, only to realize that wasn't a ponytail? Let me read you a story. My son was about 6 years old when he told my wife and I of a tall man with a top hat that stood in the hallway and a woman with a long ponytail that touched the ceiling. I asked him to give me as much detail as he could remember about the two figures. He said the tall man with the hat stood still in the hallway, but couldn't tell if he was looking at him or facing away. Then I asked him of the woman with the long ponytail that reached the ceiling. She sat on the living room couch, staring out of the window, and her ponytail was straight up, instead of down like my wife wears sometimes. I asked if maybe he mistook the figures as us that he saw, and he said no. I was too short to be the man. He was really tall, and my wife's hair wasn't long enough like the woman's. I assured him that everything's okay and nothing will hurt him as long as we're around. Fast forward a couple of months, he tells us he saw the figures again the previous night. His account was still fresh in my mind, and asked him again to explain what he saw. It was identical to the one prior. I thought it was unbelievable for him to describe the event exactly as previously, unless he was really experiencing something. I gave my son a pencil and paper to draw what he saw. He asked for a black crayon instead, saying the figures were too dark for pencils. He drew the man as described, and was expecting him to be exactly as I imagined, based on his explanation. No surprise there. Now the woman, especially the ponytail that reached the ceiling, that I was interested in. When he finished the drawing, I was stunned and really, really creeped out. I showed it to my wife, and we both looked and said to each other, "That's not a ponytail, that's a rope." My son asked if we're both scared too, but I assured him again that nothing is going to happen to him. There's nothing to be afraid of, and that they're just being silly, just like we're silly sometimes. That his drawings are really cool, and he's becoming a great artist. My son's almost 10 now. We still live here in the same apartment, although he hasn't mentioned the woman since, and the man has been a distant memory for about a year now. And that's the end of the story. So do you think that 6-year-old boy was actually seeing something in his apartment, or more of just a figment of his imagination? If so, what do you think, or who do you think that woman was? That was kind of creepy. Would you be wanting to know the history of the apartment? Would you be interested to find out previous tenants, or if something terrible might have happened there? Or would you just leave it alone and leave it all in the past? Nothing's going on now. Let me know your thoughts.
We listen, we don't get scared. and we don't judge. Let me give you guys a story time of this girl who was unalived as a teenager, and she fought for herself, and 5 years later her body was discovered, well, her remains. So y'all, back in my villages, right, I always tell you guys that when you walk downhill, right, there is houses, and then after those houses there are mountains, and then in those mountains there are trees where we collect fruits at. Okay, now in those trees that we were collecting fruits at, there was a certain place where there was a certain area that we just did not cross, because when you cross that area there was a spirit that would chase you. It chased me once and I never again. Y'all know most I had a naughty ass cousin growing up, right? So me and my cousin were looking for fruits, and you know, my cousin was like, "Hey man, there's a tree down there that has so much fruit. I think nobody touches that tree. Let's go and pick fruits over there." And there were so many. And my cousin like knows how to climb trees. So he was gonna climb on top and get the ones that are on top, and then I was gonna pick the ones that were at the bottom. That's how full that tree was. Sharpo, we had 2 plastics. We picked the fruits. The name of the fruits is called mahlaswa in Bedi. I don't know what it's called in English, but it looks like tomatoes. It looks like small round tomatoes, and it's so sweet. When it's not ripe, it's sour, and then it's sweet when it's very ripe, right? We're picking, and then the one plastic is full, and then we go to the next tree because there was a different fruit on there. Nice. I were picking. As we're picking, my cousin is like, "My dear, there is something, man, that's moving amongst those trees over there, and I don't know what it is." And I was like, "It's probably a wild animal." And my cousin was like, "Yeah, but what if it's a dangerous wild animal?" And I was like, "There's no dangerous wild animals. I don't think it's that. It's probably a dog." We continue picking. Sharpo, we continue picking. That first day was we pick. We tie our plastics, and then as we start to walk, there's this girl that calls my name. I'm like, okay, I couldn't see that it was a girl, but I could hear that it was a girl's voice, and it was calling my name. And I was like, "How do you know me?" And I was screaming as we are trying to walk fast. So this girl is like, please help me, whatever. And we're like, "Okay, how can we help you?" And I was talking to it. I was like, "How do you want us to help you?" And then this girl is like, "My foot is stuck in a tree. Can you please help me get it out?" My cousin is like, "Okay, we're coming." My cousin looks at me and is like, "Start running now." We started running. Baby, we started running. We started going. Mind you, we are far from the houses at this point because we went deep within the mountain. As we are running, I look back and this thing is chasing us. I don't know what the hell that was, but it was chasing us. It had ropes around it, and then it had a crown like with those porcupine thorns, but it was so long and it was chasing. I couldn't really see it because it was really far, but it was chasing us. And I was like, I am gonna run. And we ran. As we were getting closer to the house, it disappeared. And we were so scared. We were breathing heavily. We get home and I tell my grandpa that, "Yay, like this is what happened, whatever, like we are scared, you know, this is what we saw." And my grandfather was like, "Where did you guys see it?" And we explained that we saw it at this place. And so my grandfather was somebody that was also knew his way around traditional herbs, right? So my grandfather was like, there was a lady that came here with her husband not so long ago, and they were crying that they had a daughter that went missing 5 years ago, right? And they don't know what happened to that girl. So if we can help them like navigate that spirit, maybe the spirit is the girl. Because apparently this family went to a traditional healer to try and find their daughter, and they worked on her clothes, and they were told that her spirit is gonna fight for herself. One day you guys are gonna find her. But then the traditional healer did not guarantee as to when they were going to find the kid, right? So fine. My grandfather was like, he's gonna call the family, whatever, because they were asking my grandfather to help them, and my grandfather was like, "Listen, I'm not a traditional healer. I can't see. I can only heal. I can only help you heal because I know my way around traditional herbs." Fine, he calls the family and he tells them that we saw a spirit, whatever, so that they should bring their traditional healer so that they can see if maybe that spirit is the girl's spirit. So they got there, they bought nice things for the girl because they were trying to attract her spirit to come to them, like things that they knew she liked, right? Fine, they took a bag of the things, and then we started walking to where we were. When we got there, they started calling out her name, you know, because apparently she was also being used as a zombie, right? And then they put the fruits down, they put the things that she liked down, and they left them there. And they were like, if she finds these things, they also sprinkled like traditional herbs on there, like muti and stuff, so that if she comes here and eats these things, she's going to appear in your guys' dreams, and she's going to tell you exactly where she is. Fine, they go back, whatever, and we go back home, and you know, we didn't really care. We were eating our fruits. Me and my cousin were just having fun, just vibing. Okay, after that, I think a week after that, the lady came back to my grandfather with the traditional healer, and they were like, listen, we know exactly where to go and find her, right? So basically, the woman dreamt of her daughter, and her daughter was telling her to sprinkle things. I don't know what those things were, but they sprinkled the things, and as they sprinkle those things are going to basically show them where she is. I don't know how, but that second time I was there as well. Right? Because apparently isn't she called me to help her? So I don't know what it was. So they needed me to be there. And my cousin was there as well. So they were sprinkling the things and they were sprinkling the things. As they're sprinkling the things, guys, you know what's crazy, né? They were sprinkling the things like this, you know? Like, you know, when you throw something like this, it's obviously going to go in every direction. But as they were sprinkling, it was just going in one direction. And we were following that. And when I tell you, we found the girl's skeleton. It had no, like, meat because it had been 5 years. And her uniform was still intact. Her school bag was there as well. Oh, no. Her school bag wasn't there, but she was still in her uniform. And she was still wearing the hat that she was wearing when she left. And her mom started wailing. They called the police. And they told them where they were. We waited. And then me and my grandfather went to the main road to wait for the police so that we can show them where we were. They called the forensics. They called the what. They said they're going to do a DNA to determine if it really was her, right? Fine, they went to go do a DNA. And then the woman obviously dreamt of her child telling her that her school bag is with a man that's like this. She described the man and said, if you guys find a school bag, you guys will find my spirit. And on the day that the police officers called to confirm that those remains were of that girl, we went to the man's house. I think I went to the man's house, and I don't know what I was going to do there because my grandmother had sent me to that man's house. And that man was creepy, okay? He was really creepy. He stayed with his parents, right, as well as, like, kids in that yard. But he was creepy. So fine, I go there, and for some reason there was a room. This man's room was open because it was outside, and as it was open, I saw a school bag there, right? I saw this, like, guys, it was crazy. I saw the school bag there, and I was like, okay, didn't even take notice of it. Fine, I went back home to give my grandmother. So my grandmother sent me to this man's mom, right, to go and get something, and then I went back home. When I got home, this lady's sitting with my grandfather. They are talking, and I just went up to them, and I was like, you know, I just went up to them and I was like, you know, there was a school bag that I saw at so-and-so's house when I went to go fetch thingy. Mind you, there are kids there. I don't know why didn't I think it was one of the kids' school bags, right? And so the mom was like, what kind of school bag was it? I described it. And she was like, that is my child's school bag. And so my grandfather was like, let's not go there and attack. Let's just go there and see if we can see the school bag again and search the school bag and see if it was the girl's school bag. Fine, I walk back again with them and I walk back again with the lady. So when we get there and the door was still open, the school bag was still outside. And as we are talking to the grandmother, as the girl's mom that had been deceased is talking to the mother of this man, I see the school bag again and I'm like, there's the school bag. And they're like, yeah, okay. So they eventually asked the mom if they can search the school bag. The mom was like, no, that's the kid's school bag, blah, 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 kind of protecting her son. And the mom was like, nope, I want to see. If we are wrong, we'll apologize. She pushed the grandmother out of the way, the man's mom out of the way. She went to go search that school bag and guess what? It was the girl's school bag, y'all. And the lady cried again. We called the police. As we called the police, when the police got there, this man was trying to run and they caught him on the way because he was trying to run away. And when they got there, they caught him on the way trying to run away and then they brought him back to his house. They took the girl's school bag. Imagine 5 years of looking for this child. They took the girl's school bag and then I remember the grandmother was like, no, I didn't know that it was her school bag. We genuinely thought it was one of the kids' school bags. And it was just giving, sure you did, you know. And they told the man to show them the murder weapon. And guys, he still had the murder weapon. And it had blood on it. The blood of the girl. And they asked her, why didn't you get rid of it? And he was like, every single time he got rid of the weapon, it always came back to him. Every single time he tried to wash the murder weapon, it always came back to him. And he got arrested and they asked him, why did he do it? And he said he was sent by a certain traditional healer to basically go get the girl because he wanted this girl's spirit, whatever. And so they were using her as a zombie. And then they went to the traditional healer's house because the traditional healer also had this girl's boobs and what inside containers, guys. They found those things in containers. They were preserved. And then the traditional healer got arrested as well. And that's how they found the girl.
Bro, what's going on around?
Want to play something scary? Have you ever played the game Drama-san? No? Me neither. Want to play it? I have no idea if I'm pronouncing that right. Okay, so I want you to imagine with me, walk with me if you will. The girl from The Ring and the movie It Follows have a baby, but also make it Japanese. And also she should probably wear an eye patch. That's this game. To begin this game, the only thing you need is a bathroom with a bathtub. To start this game, play it only at night. Do not play it during the day, because if you play it during the day, it will not work. Go into the bathroom of your choosing, fill the tub up with water, flick out the lights, and get in the bathtub. Once you are in the bath, you need to sit facing the faucet. The faucet's here. You face it. Yeah, no shit, that's what I just said. You face the faucet. Face the faucet. And then you wash your hair, and you need to keep your eyes closed. You need to wash your hair with your eyes closed, even though it's already pitch black darkness. I don't know, don't ask me. While you're doing this, you need to chant the words, Drama-san fell down, Drama-san fell down, Drama-san fell down, over and over and over, until you're finished washing your hair. And don't open your eyes. If you've done all these steps correctly, you will see the image of a woman standing up in the bathtub, and she will slip and fall, hitting her face on the faucet and losing her right eye. I just want to preface, you won't actually see this. It'll be like in your mind's eye or whatever. If you actually see that, then call a priest because your house is haunted. The game also states that while you're in the bathtub, if at any point you feel movement behind you or you hear something, don't turn around, don't look at it. Just ask, why did you fall in the tub? I fell because it's slippery and I have the grace of James Charles running through a mall. No shade though. Once you do this, get out of the pitch black tub, in the dark, with your eyes closed. The rules say do not trip and fall, which like, obviously, nobody's gonna try to trip and fall. Don't drain the tub, and exit the bathroom, closing the door behind you. Don't open your eyes until you're out of the room. Once you exit the bathroom, you can now open your eyes and go to bed. Don't open your eyes until morning. The moment you open your eyes the next morning, the game will begin. Go about your day as normal, but as you go about your day, you will feel like someone's watching you or following you, but if you look over your shoulder, no one will be there. As the day goes on, if you do manage to catch a glimpse of her and she is too close for your liking, the way you stop her is you turn around, make a chopping motion, and yell, Tomare, which I'm assuming means stop in Japanese or something. Once you do that, it will like slow her down, but the more times you use this, the less effective it'll be.
So like, if you use it and she slows down for half an hour, and then you keep using it, by the end of the day she might slow down for a minute.
In order to win the game, you need to catch her gaze or whatever. You need to look over your shoulder and see her, and you yell the word, Kira. Kira. I don't know how to pronounce it. The game says that means I cut you loose, but I guess I don't know how Japanese works, but that's a lot less than 4 words. And you make the chopping motion. If you do this correctly, you win! Yay! If you don't, I suggest watching the movie It Follows because that is going to be the rest of your life now. Some points to add would be don't go anywhere that has a lot of water or is dark because she likes those areas, so she's stronger in areas like that. As I mentioned, don't yell Tomare too much because it gets more useless the more you use it. You need to end the game by yelling Kira before midnight. If she thinks you're trying to end the game, she might hide or try to stay out of your sight, making it more difficult for you to do so. Also, do not play the game more than twice. Do not play the game twice. Jesus. Do not play the game twice. Don't ask me in the comments why. I don't know. If you have a complaint, bring it to Drama-san. So although I'm not brave enough to play this game, who knows? Maybe you are. Good luck.